arrogant, throwing fits, ripping shit, tearing it, imperative. Then I'm killing this mic no matter where I live. These derelict rappers acting a fool, this embarrassing is flagrant. That's the nature of this entertainment, and we can't even change it. Guilty before arraignment, now the system tainted. But when we speak, they all laugh at us, and y'all wonder why I'm lacking trust. Try to fight a giant with attorneys that can back them up. That's church versus science, both sides start acting up. I'm late on my assignment, hopping up a mile high, climbing, obviously never silent. New alignment, I'm defiant, cannot describe it. Used to describe it as a young graffiti artist. Before the beard, I always got carded. At every bar, even though my bar's been the hardest. The scars on my face, and I ain't always been the smartest, but I'll show you where my heart is. I said I'll show you where my heart is. I can show you where my heart's at. See it on my sleeve, even if the beat stops, my soul will not leave. If I never stood tall, nobody will ever see. I can show you where my heart's at. See it on my sleeve, I can show you where my heart's at. See it on my sleeve, even if the beat stops, my soul will not leave. If I never stood tall, nobody will ever see. I can show you where my heart's at. See it on my sleeve, I can show you where my...
The type of guy that would ride with the breeze. I'm higher than most people, I'm cold and icicle freeze. I'm liking to Mike Tyson, I'm a bison, a beast. I'm high like Jamaica, like right by the beach. My pops is from a spot where they're fighting for peace. 8 years old out there watching people fight in the streets. All these sirens only make the violence increase. Yeah, we're still not loving police. It's that bright young American, nice, dumb, arrogant. Tight on a mic, but he might need a therapist. Heart full of kerosene, head full of fairy tales. Said that you're my homie, you don't know me, but I know you very well. Roll back on some West Coast shit. This whole track is wetter than your dress code kiss. About to hit the track, running on some retro fit. I guess so lit, I guess so bitch, now let's go.
I can show you where my heart's at. See it on my sleeve, even if the beat stops, my soul will not leave. If I never stood tall, nobody will...
I didn't want to ask you because
Ladies and gentlemen,
I wanted to do a soup shop.
Tuesday.
It's Tuesday.
What's going on, everybody? It's Tuesday. It feels good to be back. Hanging with the fellas. Little sports nonsense and whiskey. Pinky's here. I'm not sure where he went. He's doing something, but he's here. He'll be here momentarily again.
It's
Robert,
okay. He got lost
man.
in the shuffle. It's
How
all
you
good.
doing, sir? Cheers.
Hey man, it's Tuesday. I'm doing well, sir. It's Tuesday.
Oh
So-
boy.
You know, it's been a long weekend, man.
Yep.
It's been a long weekend,
Yeah, a lot of things happened over the weekend, eh?
man. Yeah, I mean that draft alone, that draft day, that was 6 hours. That was nuts.
Dude, I not feeling great about that team.
Yeah,
I know
got some
everybody doesn't
thoughts.
care about anybody else's fantasy team, but we had Pinky's home league that we've been a part of for a long
But
time.
I've been so
Robert's first year.
graciously been. This is my rookie year, and I'm
Robert's
excited.
first year. But
Gotta make a
he's
name
been
for
running
myself.
it for he's been running it for a long time. It's a lot of fun. We get together the whole league every year and draft somewhere, and I just ended up having to go a route that I wasn't expecting, and not
This was
feeling
such
good
a
about the
weird
outcome for the
draft.
season.
It was such a weird draft, man. It was
It was odd. It was odd. Pretty wild stuff. So that was
disappointed.
fun. We got to do that. Hang out with everybody for a while, draft, talk some shit, and hang out. So that's always a good time. That's the whole point of fantasy football, as Pinky always says, is bring people together and hang out. So it did that very much so, and then some.
Yeah, we had a good time. It was good. All things considered, it was a blast. All things considered.
All things considered. Not sure. Not
The
sure
work
if
is
my fellow
in.
Pinky isn't joining. Do I need to let him in?
He should. Nah, I mean, hey.
Did I have to let you in? Were you not able to join? What's going on? Did you not want to join and I just threw you in and now you have to look at
No,
it
I was
while
just
you're doing
trying to fix
something
my.
else?
Essentially, these women could use it over again.
I was trying to fix my microphone settings. My Wi-Fi is all messed up tonight.
Oh, surprise.
We'll see. I might be in and out. Who knows?
All right. Well, you're coming in
Might
clear
have
for
to
now.
switch
That'll
to my
make
so
things very
tablet. I don't know.
interesting. That'll
We'll
make things
see how
interesting.
this runs. Yes, live draft. It was awesome. Friends, family. Yeah. I must be cutting out again because Caleb's frozen on my end.
Oh, no.
Bye, Pinky.
Yeah.
Bye, Pinky, he says.
What was going on?
He'll be back.
Oh,
It'll be bad.
goodness.
Well,
All right, well,
I guess, Caleb, let's just we'll go ahead and get this out of the way. Let's.
hang
now
on
that-
before you get there. Just easy,
Oh,
buddy. Just
okay,
calm down.
okay,
This kid's
okay.
chomping at the bit to discuss some stuff, and he can't sit still for just a moment. I'll tell you what. Look, this is a hot fantasy season, and next week we will be discussing heavy fantasy.
What's that?
Maybe we should have done it a little earlier. Apologies.
Nah.
Next year we probably will move it up so that everybody can take our opinions and use them. But if they,
I mean,
so
that'll be
choose,
several
if
weeks of
they
a
so
segment.
choose.
I mean, we'll have to
But
plan that accordingly.
We've
but that's
got
crazy.
well, we're doing it all next week. That's what we're talking about next
No,
week.
I know.
Because we've got our
I
live
know.
draft for the Vampire League next week that we'll do and discuss fantasy and the works. So we'll do a lot more of that next week. But it is heavy fantasy season. Everybody's getting their drafts in or probably completed by now, and they're already trying to
I got one more.
tinker with their team.
I've got one more. Well, two more because I'm still waiting on this Pirate League to finish up that we're doing. So got that one. Then I've got another league with a bunch of old coworkers that I was roped into. So working on that too.
Always
Four
a good time.
fantasies. Yeah, so it'll be fun.
Always a good time. All right. Robert has been wanting to discuss the Acolyte for some time now. It's been done with its live run, if you will, for what, 2.5 months now? 3 months?
June. It's now. It's 2 months, 2.5. We'll call it 2.
2.5, okay. He's been waiting to talk about it since. I have not been able to watch it until recently, and I finally got a chance to take it in and dissect it and enjoy it, unlike Robert, apparently. So,
Dude, it sucks.
good sir. I feel like if I just watched it, we can discuss it in full. Anybody that hasn't seen it yet, that's on them. Spoiler alert, things coming up. Fast forward through this later or whatever. Don't watch it now. Go ahead, sir. Let's hear what you got.
Number one, it's totally
start wherever you want to. Let's
totally.
start.
I mean,
Let's go.
well, from the very beginning, these two kids are, made from the Force, which that's what made Anakin so special. Is that the Force created him to be the one to bring balance to the Force. So that invalidates the entire purpose of Anakin's existence.
Why?
Why? Because that's the whole because it had never been done. Manipulating midichlorians to create life is a bit of a different way, but that had not been something that had been done.
Well, the Jedi didn't know it was something that had been done.
So it completely invalidates the reasoning for Anakin being the chosen one. It absolutely does.
Why? He can still be the chosen one.
No, because that's what makes him so special.
Yeah, but it was done differently.
No.
The Force was used in both situations, but it was used differently to get the results.
No.
What do you mean no?
That's not how that works.
What do you mean that's not how that works? You
For
act like
Anakin's
Jedi and Sith are the only two Force users in the universe, in this whole galaxy.
Because the whole point of Anakin to be born was he was uniquely conceived by the Force to bring balance to it in the era of Imperial. That was his whole reasoning, was to bring about the end. So having these twins created invalidates that whole reasoning.
Why? I still don't track how it invalidates Anakin still being the chosen one.
Because the Force uniquely creating him was what partially made him the chosen one. So when you're making other people now from the Force with a
hold up though,
a witch, a cult, it doesn't work.
If you believe Anakin's story and the Force and the chosen one, the Force created Anakin. The Force was not manipulated to create Anakin. There's a difference. So the Force very well still could have created Anakin to equal things back out because people had been manipulating with the Force to do the same thing. So he's still coming to bring balance to the Force because the Force is the one that conceived him not somebody manipulating the Force to do so. Now, if you don't believe he's the chosen one, then you believe that the dark side, Darth Sidious, whoever else, manipulated the Force to create Anakin. In which case, he wasn't the chosen one, which is why everything happened. So you can argue both sides of this if you want to. But for your perspective, if the Force is the Force and the Force created Anakin, it still did so for him to be the chosen one and balance everything out. Because if he doesn't, and the Force doesn't give us Anakin, then there's issues. Think about it this way: in Avatar, right?
No, I hate Avatar. I hate Avatar. Like you're not going to justify that with me.
Well, but the thing
Avatar.
is the Yahweh, the bigger spirit, the controller of the universe, if you will, had a bigger say in what was happening when the time was needed. It didn't step in at every little issue to intervene. It steps in once to reset everything when it's absolutely needed, and then it kind of settles again. That's kind of what the Force did in this situation. Obviously, we're seeing now that there was a lot of manipulation, a lot of things going on with the Force, even before the Acolyte, which is why the Jedi shut that down and caused the witches to turn a certain direction by trying to limit what they were doing and control and say who could and who couldn't be Force users and how they could and how they couldn't use the Force, right? So there's this build up to these situations. I will say two things, and then you can jump in here on them and anything else because there's plenty to discuss with this.
Oh, so much.
The main Master Jedi, I can't remember her name, the green one. Her costume, her makeup looks so fake. I could not take her seriously at all the entire series. It was awful. Secondly, this is a two-part, A and B. I don't like that they just throw out some face that peeks at them on their way off to find May. Like it could be his master, or it could just be some evil, sinister, like person working with him or for him in the cave. What is it? Nobody knows. We're never going to find out. But they didn't do anything to say it or move it along within that season anyways. So it was a complete waste. It added nothing to the story to even do that. So that could have been completely left out. But on that note, if it is a master, and even if it isn't, but I feel like they could have, and if they were planning to, great. If they weren't, they missed a giant opportunity. When you say the power of two, May should have been coming with them to still train. They should have been training together because they're two, but actually one. So there's the power of two within the one, and then the power of two between the master and the apprentice that you could have played off of so insanely amazing. I think it would have been cool. And they didn't even seem to insinuate that that's anything they even thought about, unfortunately.
It would have been a great story if it didn't, again, invalidate the whole purpose of Anakin being in existence. So sorry.
It would not.
You will not justify it. Again, the
buddy,
twins.
You are wrong about. I'm sorry. You are just wrong.
Darth Plagueis was the one that began experimenting to create life with the midichlorians. It had never been done before, ever. If you go through all the histories, it had never been done before. So you're now rewriting the entire history of it. So the product in response to Plagueis manipulating the midichlorians to create life was Anakin himself to put an end and bring balance to the Force. And
you know what I hear right now is somebody who didn't like the prequels when they first came out.
I love the prequels when they first came out.
I'm just saying that's what this sounds like to me. This sounds like somebody who didn't like the prequels when they first came out, and now they're like, "Oh, I love the prequels."
I've always loved the prequels. That's what I grew up on, man. Like
nothing about the Acolyte does any disservice or changes anything about the Skywalker saga.
But see, I'm going beyond the prequels. I'm going beyond the prequels. I'm going with what has been written, sir. So
right, but we all know none of that's written is canon.
But again, that having the twins been in existence invalidates the whole purpose of the Chosen One and why Star Wars even exists.
No, it doesn't. The Chosen One was meant to bring balance to the Force. They just thought he was the Chosen One because the Force created him without a father. The Force conceived him. That's why they thought
in
he
a
was the
response
chosen
to
one.
bring about the end of the wicked nature of the dark side. That
No.
was his purpose.
No,
Yes.
no. Where does it ever say that? It never says anything about destroying the dark side. It just says he's meant to bring balance to the force.
You need
That's
to watch
it.
some George Lucas interviews, my man. You need to watch some George Lucas interviews, my man, and get educated.
I have many times, and he never says it's to end the dark side. I've never once heard George Lucas come out and say the point of the chosen one is to end the dark side.
That's the whole point of him.
Fine. Show me where he said that.
Yeah, I wouldn't argue with Robert on this one. I'm just saying. Like, there's certain topics, there's just experts. I'm not arguing Star Wars with Robert. I'm not arguing DC and Star Wars or Marvel with Andy. That dude's got all of that shit. Just he can't remember what day it is half the time, but
Hey,
he
man,
can pull like
I might
deep
know a thing
stuff
or
from
two about
deep.
Star Wars. I might.
I'm
know a
not saying
thing or
you
two.
don't, but I feel like you maybe
It's a common misconception that people
haven't
like
gone
to
as
throw
deep as
out there
Robert.
that Anakin, who later becomes Darth Vader, who is the chosen one, was meant to destroy the dark side. No. He was meant
That's
to
the
bring
whole point.
No, he was meant to bring balance to the force. That doesn't mean destroying the dark side.
So, Caleb, tell me what happens at the end of Return of the Jedi.
What
happens at the end of Return of the Jedi, sir?
You think just because the Emperor dies, that's the end of the dark side?
That's what vanquished everything, and that's what brought about the balance to the Force, because at that point there was no darkness, because Darth Vader was redeemed and became a Jedi. That is how that whole story goes.
Did it?
Here
Did
you
it
go.
though? Because I
Here
think
you
there are
go.
3 other movies after that that kind of say otherwise.
Because Disney bought it and fucked it up. This is the original story that George Lucas wrote.
Okay, cool. I was hoping you would say that because going back to you then, with what's written, is there not still a dark side after the Emperor dies?
That would be Grand Admiral Thrawn. And no. Because it's not a full dark side.
Don't
Just
hang
keep
on
drinking.
a second here. In the written, non-canonical now, doesn't Leia and Han have a son or daughter that turns to the dark side?
So the last command.
That's written. No, like that's written down, and that is after the Emperor dies.
And it is 5 years after Return of the Jedi. So no, they don't have a full-fledged kid. It is still fighting Grand Admiral Thrawn, and Mara Jade is the person that they are fighting.
I'm sorry, what does that have to do with not? There's still the dark side. There's still dark side force users.
That wasn't it, but okay.
What do you mean that wasn't it?
They're not fully dark side. Like, that's what you need to understand.
Let's move along, gentlemen. Let's move along.
If the dark
Bunch of
side of the
nerds.
force still exists
Yes,
and people are
bunch of
using
nerds.
it, then Anakin didn't destroy the dark side of the force. He just killed the Emperor. So again, I'm trying to say, like, and maybe it's being, cutting hairs or whatever you want to call it, but there's always going to be a light in the dark. That was discussed in that whole Moriartis arc within Clone Wars. Light
You need
and
to
dark are always
rewatch
going
that.
exist.
Then you need to rewatch that.
Why?
Because that's not at all what that is.
Bro, you need to go rewatch that then.
I've rewatched it 7 times.
How many times did the father do everything he could to prevent his son from having to be vanquished? Because he knew both needed to exist for the equality and the balance to exist. The father even says that to Anakin. So for you to sit here and be like, that is not what it's about, that is everything it's about.
You need to rewatch the episode because that's not what it is, man.
Then please explain. Please explain.
We're moving on.
Nope.
This is
Why?
we're
We're
gonna be
moving
on
on.
this all night.
Why?
We're gonna be on this all night. We're gonna move on.
Just explain.
We're 20
it.
minutes
It's not
in
that
and we haven't done
difficult.
anything. No, we gotta move on.
Cute.
You guys
Cute. No
can battle
explanation
this.
required. You guys
once
are
we
just
get
allowed
up.
to say, Caleb, you're wrong, and then we just move on and go to a different subject.
Again,
Okay.
we will absolutely come back to this, but we're gonna move on. We got other shit to talk about.
We're
We
20
got
minutes
plenty
in.
of
We haven't
time.
done
We're
anything.
there. What you wanted to talk some Star Wars? We're talking a little Star Wars.
I mean, we're
Went
talking
back
about
into the
stars, but
history
we're gonna
logs a
have
little
other
bit.
stuff to talk about. Like there are other stuff.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. Now Robert wants to fight. I like it. Oh, want it. Oh, buddy.
I mean, it's like philosophy 101 shit. Like,
So move on. We'll be on this all night.
yin and yang, light and dark, good and bad.
All right.
Can't have one
So
without the other. Like,
let's talk some college football. Let's lighten the mood. Let's bring us back together.
That-
I don't
know
There's
if you
more
guys
act like to discuss. We're just done with Star Wars. Like, that's the end of it.
No, we're not done
Moving
with it.
on.
We're just gonna move on from this right now. We'll come back to it later.
Oh,
We're not gonna talk about it right now.
You guys are funny. Okay, go. College football. What do you got? What do you got?
So much to say right there. I don't know if you guys saw, but Pat McAfee may be the greatest sports entertainer right now, or commentator.
They're just encouraging him
Right
to get
now.
drunk on the air. He's just like, I don't give a fuck.
He enjoyed his time over in his homeland for sure.
He
So-
had a blast in Dublin.
Just so that way, here, Caleb, this is from Google, from
Oh,
just
no.
getting everything all together for you. In the Clone Wars, the Mortis arc involves a prophecy about the Chosen One who will restore balance to the Force by, wait a second, what are these next three words? Destroying the Sith.
Oh, so
there you
some
fucking go, sir.
random. That's cute. I can do a Google search.
That's
that'll
the
say
whole
it's about
Mortis
exactly
arc.
What I just
That is
said.
the
Like,
whole Mortis arc.
It's not.
That is compiling
Okay.
everything all together. I'll read the rest of it if you want.
All right. Again, I mean, it's semantics, but the Sith is not the dark side. So, like, again, like,
That is the prophecy of the Chosen One, is to destroy the Sith.
it's not. It's to bring balance to the Force.
By destroying the Sith.
No,
By destroying the Sith.
that is never mentioned or said in the prophecy anywhere whatsoever.
It's literally
0
in the
times
Mortis
that's
arc.
said.
It's literally in the Mortis arc, sir.
Then pull it up and show me where that's said. Go right ahead.
I just sent it to you. Go ahead. Enjoy yourself.
No,
Get
show me
educated.
where that is said. By destroying the Sith.
I just sent
I'm
it
not
to you.
drunk enough to have this conversation, boys. I need a lot more whiskey if we're gonna keep doing this.
Go, go, go.
So, but that's it.
Oh, now we're all silent.
I'm just waiting.
Are you frozen,
Where are
Caleb, or
you
you just
seeing
Googling?
what you wrote me says destroy the Sith?
Oh my god.
Everything's right here at the top.
That is the prophecy, and that is expanded on in the entire episode arc.
That is not the oh my lord. The episode arc is not him destroying the Sith. It's about him being able to bring balance by controlling the son and daughter, just like the father has.
No, it's not.
What?
It's not.
What happens the moment the son dies?
I'm not going to recap a whole. I'm not going to recap a
dies?
whole 60 minutes for you. I just proved you wrong.
No,
but it's
you
fine.
didn't. The father shows
Fine.
Anakin his future that if he doesn't
I
choose.
just proved you wrong, but it's fine.
No, you didn't. Somebody's written somebody's take. All you did was give me somebody else's words on their take about that arc. That wasn't George Lucas. That wasn't a Star Wars official
That's
page.
how it was written, and that's how it is in the whole entire episode arc. Go watch it.
It's Robert.
Go watch it.
What does the
You
father
don't
do?
debate me on
What
it,
does
Caleb.
the father
Do
do?
not debate me on it.
Just answer the question. Stop just saying no and just answer a question. It's that simple, okay? Easy. What does the father do when Anakin's there to show him what happens if he doesn't choose to stay?
And destroy the Sith.
No! He doesn't say if you stay, you destroy the Sith. That's not what the Father does. He shows him a future where he becomes Darth Vader. That's what he does.
The Son does, not the Father. You have not watched it enough to understand. I can recite it. I don't have to explain it to you. Go rewatch it and go get educated. I've already proven you wrong. That's enough.
You haven't. You haven't proven me wrong at all. You didn't cite a source other than somebody else's written word that agrees with your opinion.
It's in the episode, Caleb.
It's not.
It is in the episode, and not only is it coming from the creator's mouth that I just sent it to you as well in another link, sir. It's already there. It has been written. It is to destroy the Sith, period. Go watch it.
All right. First of all, you have now changed what you said originally from
destroying the Sith and destroy. No, that is the whole point.
You said destroy the dark side originally. Now you're saying destroy the Sith.
Because in that point in the universe, the only people wielding the dark side is the Sith.
No, it's not. As it's been proven by a lot of other storylines. But the witches on Dathomir are not.
By the end to the Return of the Jedi, they are the only Sith users. Or dark side users, excuse me. So when he destroys the Sith, the dark side is destroyed with it. Then the Imperial remnants remain. That's what the following trilogy is about.
I mean, the last three
can
movies
we download the script of this?
Other than what you just stated. Like, I mean, the Knights of Ren are using it along with other factions that supported said faction. So it wasn't just one entity. Cheers. College football, Pinky. Boy. Pat McAfee. Roll with it, baby.
I was trying. You derailed me. Both of you. Bunch of nerds. There's nothing more than I love of Pat McAfee living his best life. In Dublin, he took some edibles. He drank a lot of Guinness. I think it was Guinness. He was toe up. There's the video of him, like the 20 seconds where he's got a beer in his hand and he can't decide like what he's supposed to do with the beer. He looks like he's going to take a sip and then he looks like, oh, I've had too much, puts it down and then picks it back up. It's amazing. And then to get up the next day and do his job like a man and do College Game Day. I love
pretty
Pat
solid.
McAfee.
It was pretty solid.
I love his work on Game Day. I love his podcast. I'm not a fan of AJ Hawk. I don't know why AJ Hawk's on that show. He's really boring. It's actually funny when they show clips of Pat having a good time. AJ Hawk looks like he is having the worst time of his life. He's sitting there like this drunk guy over here, and like he wants no part of this at all. I don't even know why AJ Hawk's on that show, to be honest.
Yeah, I've never quite understood that either. Actually,
like he
it's a really
looks cool with a cigar. Like he'll smoke a cigar here and there, and it's like I guess you kind of look cool, but other than that, like there's like he has no personality whatsoever. So, not an AJ Hawk fan.
Yeah, I can second that. I'm not a huge AJ Hawk fan myself.
No. And I do love Sheamus. WWE Sheamus showed up and partied with Pat McAfee and the boys. Had a great time. He was the only one on game day morning that predicted a Georgia Tech win, which is funny.
He did.
I bet $20 on Florida State covering the spread. And somehow, being a Miami Hurricanes fan, I feel like I still won.
Don't let Bill hear you say that.
I told Bill this morning. I was talking to him this morning. I was nice. I didn't go too far. I didn't go too far because I was like, you don't want to kick a man when he's down.
Nah, man.
So not too hard, but like Florida State, and I do think last year again they had all in the world to at least say they should have had a chance. But again, they were going to be awful without Jordan Travis. They were, and I'm glad we didn't have to watch that in the 14 playoff. This year, and that's what makes this year exciting with the 12-team playoff. We'll have to talk about that in a sec. But they were all getting all hyped, like, hey, we're back. We got DJ Ugawali, I don't know if I said that right, from Clemson / Oregon State, who actually played pretty good up in Oregon State the last 2 years, and thought, hey, this would be pretty good upgrade and or at least replacement for Jordan Travis. And he struggled to throw past 10 yards. Like
he struggled to throw past like 2 yards. I think his average was like -0.8 at halftime or something crazy.
I don't know. I didn't watch. I watched a couple drives in the first half. I didn't get to watch much of the second half, but to lose to Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech's not awful, but they're definitely not good.
I mean, they usually seem to play Florida State tight most years, it seems like, and give them a run for their money.
As Bill was giving me the rundown, he was like, our D-line couldn't stop anything. They were running over us left and right. And their D-line lost 2 starters to the NFL, Jared Verse and Brandon Fisk, that went to the Rams. They lost a lot of talent, too, with Keon Coleman gone, Jordan Travis.
Right.
Trey Benson. So I get it, but it's bummer. Bummer for them. Good for me. It still made me happy. So.
I mean, good programs are supposed to reload every year, not go to rebuild. And it looks like Florida State might be rebuild.
And I saw some articles about it. It's basically all those guys that they brought in were out of the transfer portal, or a good majority of them. And then they didn't get those same transfers this year. So
that's why I'm not I think if Dion is serious about doing the transfer portal every year, not bringing in people and actually recruiting and building a program and having guys, that's why Nick Saban was so successful, because he was able to keep recruiting 5 stars every year and then convince enough of them to stay and wait their turn, because if they played 1 year in his system, they're probably going to the national championship and they're going in the first round. Like, that was his spiel. And
Absolutely.
He backed it up every year. So he had this just farm system of just waiting for the next 5-star to come in and play.
What made him retire? NIL, transfer portal. He didn't want to deal with that anymore. And I as a college coach, I wouldn't want to deal with it either. That sounds like a big hassle.
I think that's a cop-out and an easy answer for someone who had dominated so easily because of what he had built. I personally think he didn't want to go through the work of having to relearn how to recruit in a new way.
He didn't. He no longer had the advantage.
Exactly. So to each their own. It's not like he's a young man either. So he could have said, "This is just a good time for me. I don't want to do the changes again. I've done it before, and we'll move on." So who knows?
I did like. One of the coaches came out and said they were excited about the season starting because he would no longer get calls from players' agents asking for money. And I was like, okay. And he's like, yeah, agents call asking for money all the time until like a certain point, and then they can't call. They can't call during the season.
Yeah, it would be nice if they did something. Something's going to have to happen eventually. It'll just be interesting to see what that something is.
They've got to definitely. I've heard Rich Eisen talk about it. Having a governing body, having somebody rule it, but at the moment, it's the Wild West.
Yeah,
it's the Wild West.
Robert, what are you watching?
Well, I'm just pulling up different names, so I'm understanding what's going on.
Okay, all right. Well, thankfully, Caleb, and I think you probably have a better grasp about week 1 coming up. What are some things we should be keeping an eye out for week 1? What's the matchups we should be watching for?
All right, hang on. Let me pull them back.
A Nebraska upset.
That's not going to happen. Nebraska's winning this week. All right, Nebraska's winning this week. Next week will be we're gonna get a good measurement of where Nebraska is next week.
Yeah, week 2 against Colorado in Nebraska, night game. That'll be something to watch.
I'm sad I'm gonna miss it. I'm sure I'll see. I might see the score here and there, but I will be at Green Day And I love Green Day, and I'm super excited since they're playing the whole Dookie album and the whole American Idiot album.
That'll be awesome.
So Colorado plays Thursday night against North Dakota State. So that could be interesting to get a feel for where Colorado is, because North Dakota State has given D1 programs, FBS instead of FCS programs, a run for their money here in recent years. So that could be a decent test and see where Colorado's at. Then Saturday, you've got Clemson against Georgia, 10 a.m. to kick it off. So that'll be a real quick start there. Let's see if there's anything else really interesting.
Isn't
Michigan State? No, I'm just kidding. They're playing Florida Atlantic. They're not playing nobody.
Oh, that's what it was. Notre Dame, Texas A&M, 5:30.
Oh, that's a good one. Notre Dame's
a lot
supposed to
of
be good
people
this
are
year.
saying if Notre Dame wins this game, they're probably in the 12-team playoff because their schedule gets not too difficult after that week, is what a lot of people are predicting. So that'll be interesting to see what happens there in Notre Dame.
I think they can't be better than the 6th seed, though.
Something like that, because they're not in a conference.
Because they're not in a conference.
Yep, and they're independent, so they can't be one of the they can't be that at large for the top non-power 5. So it's the top 4 for the conferences, the non-power 5, and then Notre Dame, I believe. I think that is correct, Pinky.
Yeah. I watched Joel Klatt had a 12-team playoff prediction show. It's about 20 minutes. It's pretty good. And what's cool about it is he also talks about how the playoff would have looked last year and the year before, and kind of broke it down. And it was super interesting how he did it. So like it just continued to add on to my excitement for this season of just like the possibilities. Because again, Florida State's probably in, even with Jordan Travis being gone, right? There's not a selection committee.
Oh yeah, they would have been last year.
Georgia's in because they were 12-1. Oregon's in. Their 2 losses were to Washington, so they would have been in. Like it would have made things really.
It'd been a really interesting setup for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Sunday, because Monday is Labor Day. Sunday evening, you've got USC and LSU, which will be a good test for both teams to see if either one is going to be competitive enough to get to the 12th
I think
playoff.
the USC quarterback threw like 6 touchdowns in the bowl game.
Yeah, he did.
And then LSU now replacing Jaden Daniels. Like, how does that go? That's an interesting matchup for sure.
Yep.
Is Lincoln Riley overrated? Right?
Is Chip Kelly overrated? Not Chip Kelly.
Brian Kelly.
Brian Kelly overrated. Thank you. So a lot of storylines here for that game as well, just because of what it means going forward for both teams. Because USC doesn't have an easy path through the Big Ten, and LSU doesn't have an easy path through the SEC. So they both need the win to start off the season, not 0-1, because they're going to trip up somewhere along the way of the season anyways.
The other thing I really enjoy, 12-team playoff, is, again, I don't know if we're going to get it as much, but previously, in previous years, it's possible Michigan and Ohio State would both be undefeated when they would meet up at the very end, like last game of the season. And whoever lost basically didn't get in. Well, now whoever loses, they could still get in.
Oh, yeah, that'll happen with Alabama and Georgia and Michigan and Ohio State. And, there was a time there where you were thinking it would be Clemson and Miami, or Clemson and Florida State, or Florida State and Miami. But those 3 teams have fallen off and not recovered in Miami and FSU's case. And then Clemson looked like they were going to be just the next Alabama and the next dynasty, and they've fallen off the last couple of years. So
all about quarterback play, right?
Yeah, the ACC is a very interesting situation, to say the least, and what they're going to do moving forward. But look, there's a lot of good teams. I said this on our Facebook page, and I'm not going to lie, Pinky, it does make me a little sick, okay? So this is not me trying to be a homer. This is literally me going through each conference and looking at, if I'm picking a dark horse to make the college football playoffs, I'm looking for, obviously, somebody you wouldn't expect. I'm looking for somebody who's got a fairly easy schedule. And I'm looking for somebody who's shown some potential somewhere, but hasn't quite put it all together yet. And this is why I ended on Nebraska. And I didn't want to, I promise you, because it just feels like bad juju and they're going to be awful now because of this. But they play in the Big Ten West, which isn't crazy good until you added the 4 teams that were added. But they don't play those teams this year. They have an easy schedule where they miss all the big dogs this year. I think they play USC. But, like, even USC is not predicted to be insanely awesome necessarily. But you could see potentially a 3-loss team getting into the playoffs with those bottom 6, those bottom 5.
I don't see Nebraska being that 3-loss team to make it in. But
well, again, based on their schedule, which I said was it sets up to be really easy because of this. The last point I was going to say, so they got the Big Ten West. They've got the easy schedule. The potential, they had a top 15 defense in the nation last year. Their problem was insane amount of turnovers from their quarterbacks. And that's always been an issue for since the early 2000s, right? Call it normal. But if the talks are true coming out of camp that the quarterback that they just named the starter, freshman Dylan Raiola, is living up to the 5-star recruit status and showing a lot of great things, yes, I still expect them to have growing pains. But again, the schedule is set up really nicely with a top 15 defense. They return 9 starters, Pinky. 9 starters returning. So that's why all those things combined, I see Nebraska could be a 3-loss team as one of those last teams making it into the playoffs.
So here's the only caveat to that. So 1 through 5 is really already like the 1 through 5 has an automatic bid.
Yeah.
Everybody else is kind of a selection. And Nebraska going 9-3 with a lower schedule is probably not going to tickle the fancy of the folks who select the rest of the teams.
Well, so I don't disagree with you. The kicker here is one of those 3 losses is in the Big Ten championship game. So because they're able to get there to they play Ohio State and USC. That's what it was.
I won't call you crazy, Caleb, for saying they could make it in.
So the USC is kind of the hang up because they would need USC to have 2 losses in the West somehow, and that be their only loss in the West. If that were the case for them.
If you guys are both, if you're both 9-3, they're picking USC over Nebraska.
Well, not if Nebraska played in the championship game. In the Big Ten championship game.
I think they'd still pick USC over Nebraska.
Why?
Because USC is a bigger brand at this moment. At this moment, they're a bigger brand.
Team. That's the whole point
but
of this.
You know that's going to come into play.
We'll see.
You know that as part of that selection part, the bigger brand, getting the LA viewers, all that comes into play. They would have at 9-3, there would have to be something. Now, if Dylan Raiola plays like the truth, then you might have that something that you're like, hey, people want to watch him play, right? And
now, again, I'm saying as a dark horse. So this isn't like I'm saying they beat USC and they only lose to Ohio State in the championship game.
I just think they're definitely going to have to overcome some roadblocks, and it would depend on some of those other teams that are going to be around that 9-3 territory.
I don't disagree with that. I mean, that's why I said a dark horse. I didn't come out and say they're making the college football playoffs and this is how they're going to do it, right?
Like CU and Nebraska are in that same predicament that there's hype around CU too. That if CU is 9-3, you could say they could probably make the championship, which I think Joel Klatt has mentioned. If they were 9-3, they'd be close.
Picking them to win the Big 12, which would automatically put them in. So
that ain't happening. They're not beating Texas.
I like what Nebraska has overall as a roster, especially the defense. I think it's a better roster than what Colorado has. I've said it I'm on record. I think Shedeur Sanders is the best QB in the nation. So by no means am I going to try to say they're on equal playing fields on the offensive side just because of that. So, but overall, I do think Nebraska has a better roster. And I still think going to the transfer portal for all your holes is a crazy thing because in my mind, the only reason those guys are leaving wherever they were is one of 2 reasons. they were at a program where they weren't getting any playing time because they weren't any good, and you think you're going to turn them around, or 2, they're at like an Alabama or a Georgia where they didn't want to wait. But 9 times out of 10, those guys aren't going to like a Colorado because they're going to just a different. How many times have we heard of an Alabama receiver going to Ohio State or Ohio State going to Alabama? Like, they just seem to flip big schools because that's like that gap year that other big program had. They don't usually go down programs. So I'm very interested to see what Colorado does this year. I don't think they're going to be a whole lot better than they were last year, if I'm being perfectly honest. I don't think their competition is going to be a whole lot different either from the Big 12 compared to what they played in the Pac-12 last year. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. I'm not trying to say Nebraska is going to be really good this year. I do have this scary bad feeling though that they are going to find some way to be like a 9-3 type thing, or they're going to be like a 3-9. Like I don't see it being like a gray area kind of season for them. So hopefully I'm right or wrong. I don't really know how to feel about it, but I did go through a lot of teams and a lot of conferences, and I know there's a lot of other people who could make these arguments for their team based on schedules and stuff. But that the top 15 defense that Nebraska had and then returning all of that and then limiting turnovers, and Joel Klatt said this. Like, this isn't just me as a homer. That's why it's hard for me to say this. But Joel Klatt said as much on his own podcast when he was talking about Nebraska, how he could easily see them being undefeated going into the Ohio State game. And so they would be, it's 8-0 or 9-0 is what they would be if they were undefeated going into the Ohio State game. And Joel Klatt said he could very easily see that and predict that happening. But this is, turnovers need to change. Raiola needs to play at the level that he was recruited at. There's some things that have to happen, right? So this isn't just me saying Nebraska has an opportunity here. Can they capitalize on it or not as a homer? So I didn't want to say it. It's not exactly the team I wanted to pick. It makes me sick, and now I'm going to be like either excited or really bummed all season. I don't know which yet because Saturday's not here. So
To be
let's
determined.
see what happens. Cheers.
Woo! Hey, Caleb, by the way, are we doing anything for the Nebraska CU game? Like, there has to be something, right?
I mean, we can probably talk about something and see what goes down.
I'll be heavily disappointed in you. You've been hyping it up all freaking year, so like.
It's a 6 o'clock kick. Let's look. 5:30 p.m. on NBC.
Oh, 5:40. You
Yeah,
can
I'm
go
sure-
to Caleb's house for it.
Yeah, we might be able to work something out. A couple weeks away, we got some time to discuss. We'll see what happens. So let's go Big Red. Husker Power, baby.
We'll see.
Let's do some special things this year.
Miami has a quarterback this year. Good things could happen too. I don't know.
And that's why that's why I hate that I ended up with Nebraska, because there are, like I said, there's other teams that can do this. It's not just like
Joe Klatt has the Hurricanes winning the ACC.
Yeah, he does. But that's
which
why
gives them an automatic bye.
That's why
in the first
they're
round.
they're not on the dark horse area of picking for me, Pinky. So
Right.
like, I don't see Nebraska having a chance to win the Big Ten. Right? I think Miami has a chance to win the ACC. So to me, then they wouldn't be a dark horse to get into the playoffs. So that's another caveat of trying to find this team and pick that, needle in a haystack out of all these college football programs. It's not really easy.
As we finish up college football, I want to say one of the other things, and I heard Joel Klatt talk about this, Rich Eisen talk about it. The first round of playoff games are all at the higher seeded home team stadium.
Yeah, dude.
Right? So there's just that pageantry, not going to the Sugar Bowl or
Dude,
the
those
Fiesta
stadiums
Bowl.
are going to be rocking.
Like, it's a playoff game in your home stadium. How cool is that?
Think about what those
How
campuses
awesome is
are going to
that?
be like on those weekends, dude.
Oh, bro.
Woo!
We better be having some good conversations when that happens, boys.
Dude,
Like that.
it's going to be
electric.
It's going to be crazy.
It's gonna be nice. It's gonna be nice.
I'm very excited. Look, when I don't know, this has been a topic I've been discussing and writing about, and But back in like 6th grade, I wrote like a school newspaper article about how there should be a playoff system. Very intricate for like a 6th grader. I wrote a college paper on why college football should have a playoff system. Very legit, intricate paper. So I've been arguing for this for a very long time. I am more excited about this football season than I ever have been before that I can remember. Outside of, Nebraska repeating in the 90s kind of thing. So to see what happens and see a true playoff and get what I believe, and I'm glad they went to 12 because 12 is actually the number I've been arguing about for years. Because when I went back and I looked at all the polls, there used to be the AP and the coaches poll. Then there was the AP coaches, which led into the BCS, and then the BCS was the final poll, the computer, right? AP coaches, computer, BCS was all of them together. And then that's moved on and gone forward and things of that nature. So if you go back and look, the top 12 teams had the highest percentage of being the same through all the polls. And that's kind of why I made that judgment. And so it wasn't always the same, right, in just different orders. It just had, after that, there became more variance. And before that, there was not enough. So I had always said 12. And I've got papers to prove this. I wrote them. It's crazy. So the fact that I'm seeing this and I get to watch this, and I personally don't like the automatic bids for conference champions. I would like to see them ranked still, because I think you could have a conference champion still ranked 5 or 6 or maybe 7 overall.
I don't mind it.
I'm not saying they shouldn't get an automatic bid into the playoffs. I'm saying I don't like their automatic bid being one of the top 5, 4. I would like to see them being ranked, because you could have a conference champion with 2 losses, and you could see a conference champion loser, and that was their only loss. And everybody could say that is the better team, but we're not going to get to watch that. You know what I mean? Because they're going to.
But in this point, though, they still make the playoff.
They do. And look, semantics for me at this point, because I'm just happy we're getting 12 teams. I'm just saying how I would have liked to see it present a little bit differently. But regardless.
And I will throw this out.
Teams, we get a playoff. I thought they would be better off using the bowls that were already in place and build some of the smaller ones up and do it that way. I love, though, that they chose to do the first rounds on college campuses as like basically home games. I think that's badass. It goes right into the heart of the game and the atmosphere and the pageantry, like you said, Pinky, and all the other things that come with college football. So I'm stoked. I hope my Huskers surprise a lot of people, and Dylan Raiola is the truth, and all things return to, their rightful place. But even outside of that this year, I've got a lot of things to look forward to because of all the discussion and different changing pieces week to week that we're going to see with this.
I'm going to throw it out right now. It's not going to happen. So I feel pretty comfortable. If the Hurricanes were to win the national championship, I would then get the Hurricanes tattoo.
Okay.
I'd get the duck, the crazy duck with the U. I'd get that. I love it.
I like that. That'd be sick.
I got a spot for him right on my right leg.
Let's see if your Canes ever get back to that level.
Probably not. They're not spending. I think they're spending some NIL money. I don't know if they're spending at the level they need to get to that point.
Well, before the 80s, they looked at themselves as like they wanted to be like a Harvard. They wanted to be like a Princeton. They wanted to be an Ivy League school basically down there in Miami. Did you know that?
I did not.
And I can't remember exactly what changed that changed the whole trajectory and the story, but then along came Schlembecker?
Schlembeckler?
Am I saying that right?
I think so.
And then Jimmy Johnson after him, and the bad boys of Miami and the criminals and the true athletes and the money behind the scenes and Shapiro and everything else that came with it. I can't remember what changed for that to happen, but that happened, and then Miami took off for a long time, right? Not just in football. Their basketballs were pretty good and some other things. And they've kind of gone back to
Schnellenberger.
Thank you. I knew that wasn't right. Thank you.
So they had
Schnellenberger.
They had Lou Saban and then Schnellenberger. then Jimmy Johnson, then Dennis Eckerson, then Butch Davis, then Larry Coker, and then it's been pretty much downhill since then.
Yeah, that's after 2001, Dorsey and all those boys. So, but they had a run, very similar to Nebraska, and with that, I don't think they liked the press and stuff that they were getting. They kind of squashed it in 01. They tried to go to a different image. Then they tried to go back to almost that like Ivy League school image. Then they realized that was a bad look, especially because their athletics were a thing now. And it wasn't a good publicity media story to see their athletics doing so poorly. It wasn't looking good for the school. So I don't know what they're going to do. Right now, it doesn't look like their head coach is the guy. So it's hard to say what Miami's going to do going forward. I don't expect a whole lot from them this year. But as Pinky just said, there are some people projecting them to win the ACC. I just have this odd feeling they're going to fall on their face again. And a lot of it has to do with I just don't trust that head coach. I just don't think he truly knows how to run an elite program and build an elite program. And regardless of the talent that's on the roster, some things just don't always work the way you expect them to. I mean, look at Dabo over in Clemson. People thought he had all the talent in the world, and then all of a sudden they were falling on their face for a couple years.
But again, what has happened at Clemson? They haven't had good quarterback play.
No, and there's been a lot of other things that have gone on too. There's some injuries, and then certain issues with the crew.
I mean, it could be worse. They could be Michigan State.
Listen, man, we just got rid of a whole court. Like, I don't even. The whole coaching staff is brand new. Michigan State started from the bottom up.
I'm sorry, bro.
We're only going up from here, asshole. So, like,
I'm sorry, bro. You guys are
to look forward to. Fuck you.
I mean, you guys have had really good years.
We have.
And it's just like at this point, you're like at that really weird moment of irrelevance.
Yeah, it sucks.
David, welcome, buddy. Welcome.
What's up, David?
What Texas team do you root for in college football?
He's about to say like Central Michigan Chippewas.
You're gonna say TCU or something? I don't know. I don't know where Cedar Hill is.
I don't either. I don't have any idea.
I don't know
where Cedar Hill is.
I know San Antonio, Houston, Austin. That's about my Texas geography. That's about.
Yeah, I'm not even sure if you asked me where to put those in Texas, I'd be able to pick the right place.
Houston's really close to the Gulf of
I know
Mexico.
Houston's down here, then you got Texas kind of up here, Austin's kind of in the middle, and then San Antonio's kind of down here.
No, it's Houston, San Antonio, and then Austin's like not too far from San Antonio.
Well, no, because San Antonio's kind of over here, and Houston's kind of over here.
Houston south. 15 minutes from Dallas. Okay.
That works. Okay. So being in the Dallas area, are you SMU? Are you more down to Austin and a Horns fan? Are you way out west and you're a Waco boy? Went to school in Baylor? What's going on here? What are we doing, David? Do I need to give you one of these just to be on the safe side? Is that what we're doing right now? We're doing that?
I don't know. Casey might be listening. Casey's my boy. He's a big Longhorns fan.
Hey, man.
I was wondering if you were going to bring that up.
Anybody that wants to be Texas Tech. Oh, he's a Red Raider. Pew, 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 pew. He's a Mahomes boy. He's a Clinsbury. He's a mad scientist.
Look, what's crazy, if you go talk to anybody from Texas, they claim Mahomes, so they root for the Chiefs and typically the Cowboys or whatever. But they claim Mahomes because he went to Texas Tech. So, Longhorns.
Attaboy, David. Attaboy. I mean, Texas is the reason the Big 12 is the way it is now.
But Texas left.
Yeah, they left because of their own stupidity and issues that they created.
And they went to a tougher division or tougher conference too.
No, they went because they're trying to make more money, which they could have had in the Big 12 if they had originally decided to revenue share as a conference and build a brand. They chose to be Texas all by themselves because they thought they were as big as Notre Dame. And so they thought they were going to be Notre Dame down south. and try to do everything on their own. And they created the Texas Longhorn Network and all this other stuff. And they fell on their face, Pinky, to the point where the conference wasn't making the type of money they thought it was. And Nebraska, little old Nebraska that went to the Big Ten, Colorado that left, were making more money than they were getting out of the Pac-12. So Texas and Oklahoma were like, well, we have a chance to go to the SEC and make a lot of money. So we'll just do that instead of worried about fixing our own problems that we created. I mean, that's the super simplistic version of everything, but it's pretty not terrible explanation.
All right. So excited about college football. It'll be fun to chop it up with you guys every week going forward.
I can't wait for Saturday. Well, Thursday, really, I'll be watching that Colorado game in prime to kick off the weekend. So,
right. We can't spend too long on it because we still got the schedule that we got to go through. But I had to ask, being we're self-proclaimed part of the media, right? Because we like to talk and our opinions are out there, right?
Our opinions are out there. The world, yes, absolutely.
And we could be right, we could be wrong. We might talk some shit here and there, but Colorado banning a reporter from press conferences.
That's pretty stupid.
Not cool. It's real simple. They didn't ban him from press conferences. They banned him from asking any questions. You didn't even have to do that. Just don't call on him to ask a question. And if he tries to ask a question, just ignore and move along. They didn't have to call attention to this. They didn't have to say anything about it. The only reason you do this is because you know it's one of those good or bad, press is press, and we'll have our name out there. That's the only reason you do it. Because you actually give this guy more of a voice by doing it than if you had just kept quiet and just ignored anything he tried to do or say.
Right.
Because even if he wrote a story about it, nobody would give it 2 reads. They wouldn't care. Because it was just, everybody would think it was just some random reporter who's got some vendetta, and they would have blown it off.
Well,
but now that Colorado comes out and validates it, now it's a story. Now it's an issue. So now this guy gets his 10 minutes of fame, right? And Colorado's obviously in the news with Dion and everybody else, which I think they did it on purpose, to be perfectly honest with you. I think they said it and released it on purpose because they wanted to continue to have Colorado out there before the season starts, before Thursday. They want everybody talking about Colorado beforehand. And that's what's happened over the last 3 days.
I know. They also got some play from what's his name? Paul Feinbaum as well, which was pretty funny. Paul Feinbaum was talking about Colorado being irrelevant.
I mean, Feinbaum was trying to throw Matt Rule under the bus for Matt Rule saying the Big Ten is like the NFL of college football.
Right.
But completely ignored the analogy he was trying to make because the conference is really good and they're coast to coast now, is what Rule was trying to say. He wasn't trying to act like Nebraska is in like the best conference and they're so much better than everybody else. That's not what Rule was saying, but that's what Feinbaum turned it into.
I love
so he can have his fodder for his show.
So Deion Sanders was on the first episode of the Robert Griffin and Robert Griffin's wife's podcast. Out of Pocket is what it's called.
Oh yeah, I've heard that one.
They asked him about it, and he his response was great. He was like, "Well, we must be hot if you're talking about us." And then Robert Griffin's wife said, "Well, he must be a fan," and he was like, "Well, you know what happens? A fan only turns on when you're hot." And he just kept turning. And then he went a step further and said, "Well, Feinbaum is one of the old guys who's not really relevant anymore. So he's got to make these hot takes to keep himself relevant and in the ethos of, sports media." And I was like,
I'd say I agree if Feinbaum hadn't made that his entire career.
let's just say his last 5 to 10 years, Feinbaum has not been great. And he's been more like a crotchety old guy than anything else.
I mean, that's all I've ever known him as a college football fan, so I don't know. But look, week 2, we'll know a lot about both the trajectory of Nebraska and the trajectory of Colorado. If it's a good game and one team wins, it could say a lot about both teams in a good way. Like, oh, they both might be onto something here this year. Great game. Unfortunately, somebody lost. If it's a blowout one way or the other, that team that gets blown out could all of a sudden have their narrative change in a very dramatic fashion in a very bad way. Whoever wins, I don't think it's going to be as big a story because I think people will just be like, well, this is what we expect from them if they're going to take that next step, right? They just be like, this is a team they should have beat kind of story.
Well, if Colorado wins, it'll keep that Colorado hype train going, which...
Well, yeah, but I'm saying, like, everybody been like, yeah, they should have beat Nebraska. They beat them last year. They should have beat them this year. They're a better team. This is what we expected from them. Right. It's not going to change their narrative. The same, I think, would be true for Nebraska because everybody would be like, see, if they didn't turn the ball over, this is what we kept saying they would be. They're going to be able to play better football this year. They have the talent. Matt Rule can build a program. If they lose, then the narrative becomes, Matt Rule is actually not good. They need to start relooking. If Colorado loses to Nebraska, everybody's going to be like, ooh, Deion going to the transfer portal. Oh, they're not as hot as we thought. Their season's ending real early this year. So, like, that loss, I think, can have a really bad negative storyline for both teams if they lose, depending on how they lose. Whereas I think if the other team, if it's a situation where it's a blowout, right? The team that loses is going to be bad negative. And the team that wins is going to be like, this is what we expected. Like, I don't think the story changes a whole lot. If it's a close game, I think it could be good storyline for both teams. So it will be an early season game that maybe not a lot of people care about anymore on a national level, but could actually have some serious national implications for both teams going forward. And I think I'm not going to go into it a lot. We'll talk about it weekly and we can move on from here, Pinky. But there's a lot of games that are going to do that this year, especially with the 12-team playoff. And that's one of the reasons I'm so excited this year is because I love college football. I'm always watching it from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., from East Coast to West Coast. The whole day, I love it. I always have. But a lot more games are going to have a lot more meaning this year.
I have to pick and choose which college games I watch because if I'm dedicating
any of my games, so it don't matter.
But Pinky, what I keep telling you, this is why I think it's more fun this season is you don't just have to hope that the big time games that the media is pumping out there are going to be good games anymore, because those aren't the only ones that'll have implications for the playoffs. So when I text you out of nowhere and be like, hey, Memphis is playing so and so, turn it on. It's because Memphis is one of those teams that could possibly be the non-group of 5 that gets in. And they're playing I think they're in the the American Athletic Conference, the AAC now. I can't remember for sure, so if I'm wrong, I apologize. But, like, they could be playing some, like, no-name, like, that you wouldn't expect. And I could be telling you, like, hey, 8:30 at night on a Saturday, turn this game on because it matters and it's fun to watch. And you would actually care now because it does have implications rather than just being some random college game that doesn't matter, right? So I think that's what's cool about this.
Right. All right. So when we got to hang out and watch the Broncos game and do a fantasy draft, we also ran through our record prediction for the NFL season. And
Caleb, do you have it with you?
All right. I will lead you, Caleb, as we go through. But I thought we needed to start with a caveat here. This happens every year. We know we are going to be wrong.
Really wrong.
We
totally
understand.
Wrong. This is terrible predictions.
It's pretty terrible. I will say we did it in an hour and a half. So, like that, take that into consideration. But when it comes down to it, what we did is say, based on this team's roster, this team's coach, location, this is what we think would happen, right? And we know on a couple of our predictions where we have a couple teams not winning a game, we know those teams are going to win 3 games, 5 games, but we don't know where those wins are going to come from. We can't line that team up against this team and be like, that's a win. Like, we just couldn't do it. Like, if you look like, yeah, that team should lose. That team will probably not be favored in any game this season. But we know they'll get a win because turnovers happen. A team comes out, they're not prepared. Your team is prepared with certain schemes and things that that work against those defenses. But what's up, Jack? Jack from the Wild West Show.
What up, buddy?
No, we're not talking cuts, Jack. We don't really care about that at this point. It's a sad day in the NFL because a lot of guys' dreams may have been crushed today. A lot of guys put in a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into the offseason and training camps and trying to get better. And sometimes they're told they're not good, right? So that's always a painful day. It's probably the worst day. I think Manti Te'o on Good Morning Football said it best. This is the one day of the year that guys don't want their phones to ring.
Yeah.
So
sorry, I just love the way you said that.
Yeah,
that they're not good.
Not a good enough to make that team. Doesn't mean they can't make somebody else's team, right? And again, there could be multiple things that play in: age, salary. There's certain reasons why players get cut, right? It's not always that you're not maybe the best part of the 53, but you're not that 53 for them. And when you go down from 90 to 53, that's pretty tough for most players. Thankfully, the practice squad is now 16, and you get an international player exemption as well. So you get 17 players on your practice squad. It's a lot better than it used to be. And yeah, there'll be a lot of moving pieces. So I'm not going with any surprise cuts. I didn't keep up with it that much this season because at this point, it doesn't matter that much except for fantasy purposes. I still have a draft on Sunday. There wasn't a lot of huge.
Oh, cool! I'm not the only one. Yeah.
Oh man, we'll talk Broncos in a moment, Jack. We'll talk Broncos in a moment. But we're just setting up. We're going to be really wrong on a lot of these predictions, but it's just based on the fact of if you were to on paper line up these two teams with the players they have, what team should win, that's what we went with.
And some of it's a coin flip because we think the teams are fairly equal, and it's like, what's the deciding factor? Is it a home game? Okay, give it to the team that's at home. Did they just come off back-to-back weeks that were away games, and now they're playing at home, but they're playing a team that we think is equal, so they might have some weary legs or something? Like, we are giving this some real thought. So when you see these records, like Pinky said, like, this wasn't just arbitrarily thrown out there.
It's terrible. It's
not good, though.
We don't look at the records after we pick each team's win-loss for every game. We literally look at each team. We go through and we pick a win-loss for them every week. We match that to all the teams that they just played so that they're all equal. Like, you lost here, so you won here. And then we go through and we do it for every single team. And then after that, we go back and we add up the wins and losses so that we know what the records are. This year turns out most years we feel good about it afterwards. We know we're going to be terribly wrong, but we still feel good about it. This year, this is one of the worst we've ever felt.
I don't feel good about it at all.
It's turned out, but again, if you want to talk to us about it specifically, I'll end up putting out the sheet. I'll put it up on the social media.
Let's clean it up, though. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll clean it up so you can see what it looks like, but so that people see where we picked them, and if you want to argue a specific game, we can kind of give you our reasoning and why we went that route. There's 3 of us, so we didn't always agree. It was majority rule, and we moved on. You got a quick chance to kind of give your piece and maybe sway the other person, which rarely happens, but it did a few times. Otherwise, it's majority rules, and you move along. So, yeah, that's where we're coming from.
Let's start with the NFC South.
Okay. So, NFC South. Who do you think we have at the bottom of that division? Let's guess. Carolina, maybe? Okay, let's go see where Carolina's sitting. Carolina's sitting at 2-15. They did get a couple wins. We do expect a better team than last year. More competent play. They do have some talent. It's young. They have a couple vets. We've got them with 2 wins on the season. We'll see if that holds true. Next up, you have
New Orleans
Saints. Now, I don't think anybody predicts New Orleans to be that good. We don't think they're going to be that good at all. We think there's a lot of issues down there in New Orleans. We've got them at 3-14. So you've got 2-15 at Carolina, 3-14 at New Orleans, and then you jump up to Tampa Bay. And a lot of people think Tampa could be fighting for the division. We don't agree, especially with some of the most recent moves that Atlanta has made. We see a lot of talent on Atlanta's team. We do see them winning the division, and we don't think it's close. Tampa's going to go ahead and finish at 8-9. Game under that proverbial 500 mark, knowing that you can never get there right now in the 17-game schedule of the NFL, but we do have them at 8-9. So they actually kind of take a step back from last year schedule-wise. We think they play about the same. The record just doesn't show a playoff team, okay? At the top, we have Atlanta winning the division, competing for the NFC as a whole as the number 1 seed. They're finishing 13-4.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
I think they're gonna be good.
I think so too.
Who's talking?
I think that's Robert.
Oh. I'm like, I hear a voice now all of a sudden. I was like, are they calling us terrible for our pick? I want to know.
No, we're good. We're good.
Now.
No, there's just another TV going on that I got to take care of.
All good. All good. So Atlanta 13-4, Tampa 8-9, New Orleans 3-14, Carolina 2-15.
Nice.
This might be the most accurate division we have.
Yes.
I think this one might be pretty close. Saints, I think, are going to be bad enough that Spencer Rattler gets some playing time this season.
Yep, we all are on the same boat there for sure.
I think I could see Tampa again. 8-9 could easily be 10-7, right? It's not that far off. Couple games go their way, right?
Absolutely.
So.
With everybody's schedule, we could see a couple games going slightly differently here and there. So all of these, for us personally, all of these I would say have a plus minus of 3. Like in all honesty, that would be a pretty.
Which is like your floor ceiling, right?
Our standard deviation would be 3. So it could be 3 down or 3 up. We could easily see that going either way. So, but
what about?
Again, it's kind of what we're seeing.
So Atlanta will be in.
Yep.
And the other teams with those records will be out. They will not make the playoffs.
Correct.
What about the NFC East?
So the NFC East. Interesting little predicament we had this year was looking at the Giants and trying to figure out how that roster manages to beat anybody on their schedule. Given what they did last year, what they did in the draft, what they are now, we don't see a lot of hope for them. Giants fans, sorry. Good news is you get the number 1 pick next year, potentially. There's going to be a coin flip. We'll get to that later. But you could have a chance of getting a really good quarterback and moving on Daniel Jones and trying to rebuild that franchise because we have the Giants at 0-16. It's going to be a rough year for those Giants.
0-17.
I'm sorry, 0-16.
Mark did not like that. Mark did not like that.
I was trying to let him not set the record, Pinky. 0-17 for the Giants. Dang.
Yikes.
So it's going to be a rough year. It's just going to be a rough year. There's no getting around it. Sorry, Giants fans. Next up, we've got the Commanders.
Which again, they'll probably win 3 or 4 games. Like they'll find those wins. We just don't know where those are.
Yeah, we're not saying that anymore. It's the last time we're saying that. And if you want to argue with us later, it's because you didn't watch the beginning of this segment. So I apologize ahead of time. Deal with it. The Washington Commanders will be next up in this division at the bottom half, unfortunately for them. But they will be 7-10. A solid improvement. We do think there's enough talent on this team to be competitive, but not quite the talent they need overall to get themselves into that playoff picture and truly make some noise. They're not quite there yet, but they will be a competitive team that is going to take some games from people. Again, the schedule helps because they play an easier schedule because of what they did last year. So that's always a bonus for them. Next up, you have Dallas. We've got Dallas finishing 11-6. Get them right there on that wild card playoff bubble area. And then finally, we've got Philly winning the division. Philly's going to win the division, and they're going to go ahead and be 14-3 this season. Look, they put together their second version of the Dream Team. This is probably their redeem team version, actually, because they need to make up for that. There's
I can see that
on this Philly team. New coordinators on the offensive and defensive side. A lot of things happened in the offseason that they said are going to correct whatever happened the second half of last year. So it's going to be very interesting to see what Philly does. But we have them 14-3 and winning the NFC East.
Yeah, I feel like Philly's implosion last season really had to do with no coordinators on offense or defense that knew what they were doing and didn't know how to make adjustments. They were first-time coordinators.
I don't know. There's talk that Steichen was coming in saying he wanted to simplify the offense constantly, and that was the detriment.
Steichen wasn't
not Steichen.
There last year.
Oh, my gosh. Not Steichen. I'm so sorry. The head coach, not the offensive coordinator that left, I apologize, that the head coach was being too involved in the offense last year and he wanted it to be simpler. He wanted to dumb it down for whatever reason. And that's not how it was the previous year. And that's why they didn't have as many checkdowns. They didn't have as many outs for certain things. And it cost them. And hopefully Sirianni learned from his lesson, right? And he's going to allow Kellen Moore to do what Kellen Moore does. He's going to allow Fangio to do what Fangio does. And there's going to be all that talent running around the field making plays consistently every Sunday. And a couple other days along the way, obviously. But so, yeah, Philly, they were, 10-0 last year before they kind of imploded and still made the playoffs. So it's not like they had an awful season record-wise, per se. It's not like they lost any talent. They added talent. So let's see what happens.
Robert, what do you think about that? About the NFC East?
I personally, again, when we were going over this, I thought Philly was really going to be on a redemption arc and really progress and go forward here. Then they're going to be real contenders. I personally agree with this. I don't want to say it's the most accurate one that we have, like the last one, but I feel like this is pretty close. So I would put money on it if you that.
What did we have Dallas at, Caleb?
11-6.
Yeah, okay.
It's contentious. I think it's worthwhile, and again, some of those Dallas games that we talked about it was a pendulum, really, and it came down to some of us really talking about where this really lands on paper with some of their other games. But again, this is for fun, and we're not.
And I don't think Dallas's defense will be as good without Dan Quinn running.
Yeah, we don't agree there. It'll look different. I think it'll be as potent still, though.
So
we'll see. Mike Zimmer,
Jack, I can appreciate your sentiment, what you're trying to do for your boys, but Philly's not going to miss that in any shape, way, or form in my thought process.
Miss Epps? Who's Epps? I don't even know who that guy is.
That's why I'm saying they're not going to miss it, because I don't even know who he's talking about. Whether that's a coach, a coordinator, a player, I don't know, but Philly's not going to need to worry about it because it's not somebody I've even heard of before. So that's more of a hometown fan knowing something that the national media doesn't really care about, I think.
I think Philly will miss Jason Kelce more than they miss Epps. Just saying.
Yeah.
Zimmer is the new DC in Dallas, Alex.
Correct.
So
and Zimmer's been known to be a really good defensive coordinator. He was actually a pretty damn good head coach, actually.
He was a decent head coach. I will give him that. Absolutely.
But he was known as a really good defensive coordinator. That's why he became a head coach. Now,
he has been out of the game a couple years.
Dan Quinn? No, he does not. So he's going to use those pieces and that talent differently. But I think he still has a knack for putting talent in the right positions with his.
Marcus Epps is a safety for the Raiders. I'm going to put that out there.
Okay, so yeah, Philly's not going to – that's not – we're good. Sorry, Jack. Sorry. You guys.
He might be a fine player, but I don't think that's going to that doesn't really move the needle, as they say. All right, NFC West.
NFC West. So heading out west, we're going to start at the bottom.
Correct.
As we always
Mikey.
do.
He was a DC consultant with CU last year, and their defense was awful.
Sorry, Jack, if you looked at the Eagles secondary last year, there wasn't a whole lot to be desired.
They were all bad. They were all bad.
So, sorry. Maybe he does better with Pierce in his system in Oakland. Who knows? We don't think it did a whole lot for them moving the needle, and we'll tell you why here in a moment. To the NFC West, if you will, good sir. Out in the West, Pinky, we have Arizona at the bottom. Now, we actually like what Arizona's doing. We think they're going to be a competitive team, but we don't think they have enough pieces to truly win enough games to be anyone that's going to be making any noise this season in terms that matter. So with Arizona, we've got them sitting at 5-12. Okay. Then you move up, and this slightly controversial here, but we all do agree that we think they do take a slight step back. Just the law of averages, if you will, and wins got to go somewhere else. But Seattle's going to be 5-12 as well.
Yes.
Both Arizona and Seattle at the bottom of that division.
And that probably has more to do with Seattle's schedule.
Yes, they've got a hard, difficult schedule. It's gonna be a hard road ahead.
And again, when you take like the quarterbacks they're playing versus Geno Smith, I think we pretty much picked the other team most of the time.
First year head coach, first year offensive coordinator in the NFL. There's a lot of things that Seattle, we think they have the talent to be really good. We think they're going to be really competitive, actually. It's just unfortunately the schedule lines up such that we don't think they're going to win as many games. It's going to look like they're taking a step back, but it may not be as bad as it looks. So we'll see what happens for Seattle, but we've got them right there with Arizona at 5-12. Then you move up to the Rams, who we also think actually take a step back this season and don't quite move forward like a lot of people are projecting them to and be that playoff contending team. We actually see them taking a slight step back at 8-9 this season there in LA. And then the slight surprise, and we didn't like doing this, but it did fall this way. And
Hated it.
Again, a lot of factors go into it when you're looking at every game individually and just picking a win-loss for those games and things of that nature. But San Francisco is going to run the table at 17-0. Yeah.
We know that's not happening.
It's not going to happen. At best, like maybe 13 wins.
I still think 13-14 is probably the right amount.
13-14 is the right amount.
And here's the kicker. I mean, we like their division for them to be able to, yes, division is hard to win and beat two teams twice a year, but their division isn't necessarily up this year like they have been in previous seasons. We also think, when you look at their schedule, just to kind of give you an idea, they get KC and Dallas at home in back-to-back weeks after KC and Dallas are coming off some other games and travel and things of that nature. So that really plays in San Francisco's future. So when you look at all of these factors and the fact that there is talent everywhere on that team and their coach and what they've done in previous seasons and winning games and being really good, it's not as crazy as I thought as you may think originally.
As long as Trent Williams and Brandon Ayuk are on the field week one, they have the most talented roster in the NFL. But, Mikey, you're right. They'll probably lose 3 to 4 games. Absolutely true. We just couldn't predict which ones those are going to be based on who they're playing.
Like we said, our deviation is 3. So
Deviation
keep that in
3.
mind. Keep that in mind.
It's on the record.
Dreamweaver, Mikey, Jack, appreciate having you guys. Do like the engagement. And it's okay to tell us we're wrong. We know we're going to be wrong. I like San Francisco a lot.
Keep that in mind. Some of these will be right because we have had a few that go our way. So, amazingly enough, they're not all wrong.
Should be like penny bets,
Hey, a squirrel finds a nut every once in a while, right?
Yeah,
right. NFC North, which we do think will be the best division in football, I believe, by records, right?
Along with the AFC North.
Okay.
Well, Yeah, if you want to say overall records, but we think competitive wise, both are going to be right there at the top as far as overall competitiveness. The difference is I think some of us see Minnesota as being a little bit higher floor than Pittsburgh. So that's why the records are going to show that the NFC North is a little bit better than the AFC North. But I think overall we see both divisions as fairly
tough.
Equal. Yeah,
I see them being very tough.
Yeah. So on the NFC North side, coming back, we are looking at the bottom here, and the bottom is actually going to be Minnesota, and we've got Minnesota at 8-9 at the bottom of that division. Then you've got Chicago at the next slot, and Chicago finishes the season at 10-7. Okay,
digging it. Bear down.
Move up another slot. Is it going to be Green Bay or Detroit? Green Bay or Detroit? Green Bay is going to finish second at 13-4, and Detroit's going to actually win the division at 14-3. The same record as we mentioned earlier, Philadelphia finishes with.
I got to show Robert. I was going to wear it tonight, but it's still a little too hot, and I don't have the AC going.
Bro, I cannot wait. It's so sexy, man. It's so beautiful.
Got my Hutchinson jersey. I'm ready. I'm on the Lions bandwagon. I met Hutchinson at the Super Bowl. Super nice dude. He signed my Vegas draft football, so I'm all in on the Lions. And they helped me win a fantasy championship, so I'm all in. They got me. I'm Broncos fan, and I'm a Lions fan this year. I am rooting for the Lions. I want a Super Bowl for the Lions. Jack, Jack, I'm going to say this, and again, this goes along for Broncos fans as well, because we stomped the preseason. The Bears stomped the preseason as well, if you look at their point differential. Everything's so vanilla. You can't take anything away from 3 sacks and 22 pressures against the 49ers in preseason. There's no scheming. There's no, they don't show all the plays that they have against your defense. You could just say that your team has better depth than it's had in the past when it comes to preseason performance.
So what's cool about the NFC is then you have San Francisco 1 seed undefeated. You've got the 2 seed being a tiebreaker scenario between Philly and Detroit. That's 3 teams right there. Then you've got Green Bay and Atlanta both at 13-4, which is another tiebreaker for 4 and 5.
So Atlanta would win because they would host Green Bay in that scenario.
So then they'd get they'd get 4. Mm-hmm. Then you have Green Bay at 5. Then 6 and 7, you're gonna have 3 teams. Or at 6 you'd have Chicago at 10-7, and then
playing the Lions. They would play the Lions.
Right, but then for 7.
Oh wait, no, they play the 3rd team.
It doesn't matter. For 7, you'd have. Did I already say Dallas? Sorry, Dallas would be 6, and then Chicago would be 7.
Who would be 2? Would it be the Lions or would it be the Eagles? Whatever. Or are we doing a coin flip? Yeah.
Yeah, whatever the tiebreaker.
Okay.
So San Francisco 1. Then you'd have Philly and Detroit at 2 and 3. Okay, right? And then you've got Green Bay and Atlanta at 4 and 4, or Atlanta. Then
Atlanta would be 4.
5. Dallas 6 and Chicago 7.
Man, will the Bears Caleb Williams hype train get completely rolling if they make the playoffs?
And then you got 3 teams from the NFC North in the playoffs.
I think they're that good. I mean, we had 3 AFC North teams in the playoffs.
Which, if that works out, I think in that scenario,
it would be
you would have if Detroit ended up being the 2 seed, you could have Detroit-Chicago first round matchup in Detroit.
Right.
Which would be pretty cool. Pretty cool.
That'd be wicked.
So that's the NFC side. That's what we're looking at.
All right. So AFC South.
Okay. AFC South. Now, interesting division. There's some potential here. We don't quite think it's there when it comes to Indy. We think Jags are still not quite what everybody was hoping to see in taking that step forward. Rather, they're staying the same or regressing, unfortunately. Go ahead.
I was going to say, Dreamweaver, I'm not so sure. They were 7-10 last year with pretty bad quarterback play. So with decent quarterback play, could they be 10-7? I think you could make the argument. Seattle could be sneaky good, but that comes back to, do we get 2022 Geno Smith, or do we get kind of turned back into a pumpkin 2023 Geno Smith, which some of that had to do with protection issues. The O-line was banged up. They had some injuries. They didn't play as well. Which one do we get?
Dreamweaver, let's just say I made an argument with advanced stats to try and let Pinky know that last year wasn't as bad as it actually looked. And again, majority rules, which is why it's nice to have three of us, because it can kind of just break any conversation if two people feel strongly and you move along and you go forward. So, but you're not the only one that thinks, Seattle could be sneaky good. But I don't necessarily think that would come at the expense of Chicago making the playoffs at the same time.
No.
Chicago. I think Chicago realize how good Chicago's defense was last year. Caleb Williams is going to be a competent quarterback, regardless of what people want to think, and their play calling is going to be better, and they do have a lot of weapons.
Chicago's defense took a step after they traded for Montez Sweat. Once they traded for him and they had some pressure, they were lights out.
Well, it wasn't just that. Eberflus started calling the plays on the defense, too. He took over play calling at roughly the exact same time. So two things align very well together. So we'll see. We do feel good about those 7 playoff teams being picked. As far as records, obviously, we know how that can change, but we do kind of like where those 7 playoff teams land. AFC South. Like I said before, we think Indy has some potential, but they're still lacking in talent. They don't have enough pieces all across the board to really be there. But they're not at the bottom of the division, guys. That's because Tennessee is in this division, and Tennessee is on a whole new world, if you will, and trying to completely revamp and rebuild and their image and everything else. Second-year quarterback in Will Levis. They tried to bring in DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Ridley, 2 aging wide receiver number ones. They don't really have a running back, but they're going to go with the same type of running back in Pollard and Spears, who are both kind of that more third down back type, if you will. Okonkwo, I know I'm not saying that right, but everybody thought he could maybe be a breakout. Now it looks like he's going to split snaps with the other tight end they brought in, who nobody even knows who he was before he started coming in at camp in Tennessee. There's a lot of things there. The defense has always been pretty solid under the former regime.
First-time head coach.
Right, but who knows what the defense is going to be now under the first-year head coach when it's not Vrabel and his staff. So Tennessee has some issues, and they're going to be.
It'd be fair to say they're a true wild card, right?
Yeah, a wild card in the sense that we know they're going to be really bad. Yes, and they're going to be 1-16. 1-16 for the Tennessee Titans, ladies and gentlemen. Moving up in the division, we do get to the Indianapolis Colts. Now, kind of like Seattle, there was some debate here on how good this team could truly be. But we've got them sitting at 5-12. A lot of that comes from somebody not believing in any shape, way, or form that their quarterback is going to be able to finish the season, which causes him to greatly skew his bias even further in one direction.
He has no shame.
Yeah. Indy at 5-12.
If AR stays healthy, they should be a pretty good team. Although I think he might still have some struggles. We'll see.
Jacksonville, 7-10. Basically more of the same from the Jags. They are what they are right now. That's kind of what we've decided. They're not going to take that jump and move up into that upper echelon. They're right in that middle of the pack on the wrong side of the playoffs. And then winning out the division, taking a slight step back from last year because we still believe they over-exceeded last year, okay, slightly. And while their roster we do believe is going to be better overall and take a step forward overall in talent and experience and everything else, their schedule is not going to be crazy easy this year. So because of that, they're going to win the division, but they're going to be 10-7. Houston wins the division at 10-7.
The Texans have a first place schedule this year.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Again, I'm on the Texans bandwagon too. I met CJ Stroud, awesome dude, good time. I'm hyped on them. They should be pretty good, but they play some tough teams.
Absolutely.
AFC East.
Well, Pinky, the AFC East is interesting because the New England Patriots are in this division. And when we thought about the Patriots and what they're doing right now and all the changes that they did and how excited we are to see them go 0-17, we just couldn't help ourselves but to pick such a record. And again, when you go through their schedule and you're like, people wanted to know how Carolina got a win. Well, we've got Carolina actually beating the Giants, right? That's how Carolina got a win.
Well, they got 2 wins.
Well, I'm just saying, how did Carolina?
Because they play the Patriots too.
A lot of people think Carolina could be the word. No, it's not against the Patriots. Actually,
I thought it was against the Patriots.
No. Nope.
No, we have them beating New Orleans in one of their 2 matchups because we don't like New Orleans much either.
Yeah.
But where I was going with that is even Carolina, we think, can be better than the Giants. And the Giants, we believe, are basically on the same level as the Patriots when it comes to roster and issues and new coaching and quarterback play and everything else that goes into it. We think they're going to be really bad. Really bad. And when you go through their schedule, if there was a coin flip, we started looking at roster talent overall. And
I don't think we could pick the Patriots in any game.
I like Ramondre Stevenson a lot. I think on a really good team, you could be talking about him as one of the top 6 or 7 backs in the league, potentially. But on the Patriots, he doesn't get that kind of work or potential.
We have no idea what Mayo is going to be as a coach.
Well, where I was going with that is the fact that he's the only guy on their entire roster that I would say has any form of top-end talent. The rest of that roster, I wouldn't say anybody on that roster is top-end talent.
I would say the corner they drafted last year has got talent, but that's about it.
Top end?
He's pretty good. Yeah, he's pretty good.
Okay. Well, outside of that, I mean,
Gonzalez. They drafted Gonzalez out of Oregon. He's pretty good.
He is actually. You're right. He's pretty good as a.
But other than that,
it's a thin roster. So,
and they traded Matt Judon, who's their best pass rusher.
Yeah.
I don't know where they're going to get pressure from. Their O-line has been awful. Starters, second string, third string, all their O-line guys were awful all preseason.
Yep.
Like Drake May started to look good in the preseason, and now the debate is, well, he looked good, but do we want to put him in as a sacrificial lamb and get him seeing ghosts because of how bad our O-line is, or do we just let Jacoby Brissett take that pounding, right? So
not good. Not good.
Yeah,
now, and moving up, it gets all of a sudden drastically different. And if it weren't for the Patriots, this could be talked about as one of the best conference divisions.
Absolutely,
in the NFL.
Absolutely.
Because you then have Miami at 10-7, just below Buffalo at 13-4, just below, and yes, we'll come back to Buffalo in a second. Just below the Jets, who we have at 15-2. Now, wrapping back around to Miami, Buffalo, New York. Miami, we think it's going to be more of the same. They're going to start really hot. They're going to kind of cool off a little bit in the middle of the season, and then they're going to kind of have a slump at the end.
What was their story last season?
Yeah. Cold weather, all that good stuff.
Well, not just cold weather. Every team above 500 that they played, they lost.
Right.
So every good team they played, they lost.
Miami, we feel like is going to do basically kind of more of the same. Good team, not great team. We do not think, like the national media and a lot of others are predicting, that Buffalo is going to fall off because they lost Stephon Diggs.
Addition by subtraction.
Exactly. We actually like the potential of that offense even more this year and Josh Allen's potential now as a collective. So we are the opposite of what a lot of people are talking about.
So I'm hoping, I'm a Josh Allen fan. I'm a big Josh Allen fan, as you guys know. I got a Josh Allen jersey as well, as my goal to have jerseys from all 32 teams. Josh Allen, I'm hoping can make the next step like Mahomes did previously. Once he lost Tyreek Hill, he took the next step of just hitting the open guy. Not worrying about getting it to the number one receiver, hit the open guy.
And he started doing a lot of that the second half of the season when they started running the ball as part of the offense.
Who was their number one guy in the second half of the season?
Dalton Kincaid in the passing game, and James Cook had the most receptions.
Well, no, Kincaid was not the top guy. Who was the top guy? He was close. Shakir was the top guy. Somebody nobody would know of.
Well, I wouldn't agree with that, but okay. I would say he was a weapon that they used to help open up the offense, but I would say Kincaid definitely became the safety valve.
Kincaid definitely helped. Absolutely. No. I mean, he did. He really.
Either way, I think it is addition by subtraction. People want to talk about, they lost Gabe Davis too. What did Gabe Davis ever do outside of that Kansas City playoff game?
Nothing. A whole lot of nothing.
We're good. We're good on that. And then the Jets. I don't know if a lot of people are aware of this, but that is. And it's hard to argue that it isn't the best defense in the league.
It's not an argument. It's a fact.
They upgraded their O-line. Aaron Rodgers is going to play a full 17 games, and we all know redemption Aaron Rodgers tour is a scary thing for everybody else. They could have, guys, in all honesty, I'm not trying to say this as a hot take. Garrett Wilson could have CeeDee Lamb season last year, this year. Garrett Wilson is that good, and that's the season he could have potentially here. And Breece Hall might be the best running back in the league. This team is not lacking talent in any way. So, best defense, a really damn good quarterback, weapons to use for the quarterback. There's a reason we have the Jets at this. And a lot of people were predicting as a Super Bowl team last year with a lesser roster.
This team almost beat the Chiefs last year with Zach Wilson at quarterback.
That happened.
Like they won enough games last season because their defense was awesome.
Yeah,
awesome. And it hasn't gotten any worse.
The defense. That was it. Honestly, last year when I watched the games, it was because of the Jets defense. Because
so
they were just unstoppable.
I think a lot of people are forgetting as well with the Rodgers injury how good Rodgers is when protected. Now, if he's not protected well, he will have issues. He doesn't have the same movement skills as he used to have. But if he's protected, you can't tell me that Rodgers can't put the ball in windows because he can. And he will.
Doesn't necessarily need that much protection because the dude is one of the quickest releases in the NFL. And he's also the smartest. And people be like, oh, he throws balls away just to not have interceptions. Yeah, no shit. That's what you would rather have your quarterback do. So people are there saying he's doing that to pad his stats. I don't care.
we had a previous podcast. We talked about the Jets and that we're high on the Jets. And a lot of people on TikTok, when I put our videos, I'll post our videos in shorter 1-minute segments. And a couple people posted on there that we were crazy. And I was just like, I don't get it. If they had competent quarterback play, they were a playoff team. They have, as long as Rodgers is healthy, they have competent quarterback play. Period. Rodgers is going to be good to above average at very least, if not elite. He may not be elite anymore. He might not. But they don't need that because that defense is so good. If you get a chance to draft them in fantasy, draft them because they are that good.
I'm a big Aaron truther, so you ain't going to hear me say anything but the like of that happening. If the man stays on the field and he's not hurt again,
just go into the closet, baby.
He's going to do work. He's going to do work.
Just go into the closet. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go.
Now,
I love Aaron.
To the AFC North, because I know where Pinky wants to finish.
We always finish AFC West. It's what we do. It's what we do.
I know, Pinky. I got you, buddy. We've got the Pittsburgh Steelers and Mike Tomlin finally finishing below 500.
And it's the best thing they could do.
At way below 500. at 4-13. I do not agree with this.
Look, again, with the 3-game differential, again, they find ways to win games they shouldn't. They have for as long as I can remember, as long as I've been a football fan. But I feel like their O-line has not gelled.
It looks bad.
It may take some time.
It looks bad.
And they have – so there are 2 quarterbacks from last season, 2023, that took the most sacks and the longest to throw a football. Russell Wilson, followed by number 2, Justin Fields. Those are 2 categories that are not good. Their defense should still be pretty solid. But I feel like their offense is going to struggle. And I don't think outside of Pickens, they have a tremendous amount of playmakers. If you took Russell Wilson and Justin Fields and put them on the Bears, where they have Rome Odunze, Keenan Allen, and DJ Moore, I feel like they probably could be pretty good, even with holding the ball and taking sacks. But the Steelers don't have that.
I think Pickens is good. I think Freiermuth is good. I think Najee and Warren are both really good.
They are good. But when you talk about
but they don't
passing
have
game,
an offensive line, it looks like yet again, that's going to allow any of those weapons to shine.
So if you don't have a O-line that gives you the time to throw the ball with 2 quarterbacks who don't make quick decisions, you need guys who are open immediately. And I don't think they have that.
I still think they should just start Fields to have a learning curve and know that they're going to have to work out some kinks that were bad habits created by Chicago, and they can work with it and move forward. It doesn't feel like that's what they're going to do. And I'm going to order a bottle of whiskey.
Caleb, you are not wrong. That's what they should do. But they're going to do what I said they're going to do.
And I will say, I think that defense is elite. I think that's a top 5 defense. I do. So
I still question their corners quite a bit.
I think this is a giant wild card team for sure. But we have them at the bottom of this division. Even though we think this could be right up there at the top, the most competitive, we think they're the Steelers. They do have talent. They're still going to be competitive. They're just not going to win these games. That's the kicker. So 4-13 for the Steelers. Moving upwards in the AFC North from Pittsburgh. And next up in the division, we're going to have Cleveland. And we're not trying to diminish what Cleveland did last year, and we think they're still going to be really good this year and really competitive. They're going to be at 10-6. That's where we have Cleveland sitting this year. 10-6, right there. I'm sorry, 10-7. 10-7.
And I would
foolish. 10-7.
I kind of challenge it because I don't know if we're going to get a good enough Deshaun Watson to be 10-7. But the defense is pretty good. The team showed with Joe Flacco they were really good last season. Once Joe Flacco got in there, I don't know what juju he had, but he made David Njoku the best tight end of the year down the stretch. That helped me win a fantasy championship as well. How good Njoku was down the stretch, and Amari Cooper as well. So, and that was without Nick Chubb.
Yeah,
they were able to do that without Nick Chubb. So good. Kevin Stefanski, I feel like, is a good coach. They have an elite defense, but we need a better than average Deshaun Watson.
If he returns this season somehow to 85, 90% of old Deshaun Watson, this 10-7 quickly becomes a 13-4. Absolutely. If he's like he was last year, basically, this 10-7 could turn into a 7-10. So it does a lot hinge on him, but we do love that.
Which is defense. That 3-game variance, right?
So we'll see what happens. So at the top of the division, we have a tie and a coin flip between Cincinnati and Baltimore to see who wins this division at 13-4. Both teams will be battling it out all season. The talent on both teams is undeniable. The quarterback play is most argued top 5 in the league. So there's not a lot to say bad about either team. There are things that you can say you'd like to see different or things they need to work on if they want to take that next step. But overall, 13-4 with a coin flip, and again, tiebreakers to see who wins this division between Cincinnati and Baltimore.
Now, let's be honest. As Broncos fans, we know we do not want the Chiefs to three-peat. I don't want them to three-peat. It's never been done. I think it's an interesting storyline. I don't want to see them do it, but I do think it's an interesting storyline throughout the season. The only two teams that I feel like really have a chance to stop the three-peat, well, three teams. And that's going to be the Bengals, the Ravens, and whatever NFC team makes it to the Super Bowl. Those are the only three teams to me that have a chance to stop the three-peat.
I think Buffalo does.
I'm still worried about their defense myself. And Matt Milano immediately going down with a possible season-ending injury doesn't help the fact at the moment. They can play some good defense, but again, I don't know if Sean McDermott is still the right coach to take them over the top. And so again, I still think Baltimore and Cincinnati, very good teams. If Joe Burrow is healthy, that team is very good. And Joe Cool is not scared of anybody. That's why I like Joe Cool so much, because he's not scared of anybody. I love Joe Burrow.
Yeah, we get it. You're still forgetting one team that I actually, and you said you're on their bandwagon this year, which you actually kind of like them to win it all more than anybody else. And I'm surprised you didn't say them. It's with my boy, Aaron leading the Jets, and you didn't even mention them.
I guess I would say that they would be a threat as well. I am very high on the Jets this season. Most people call me an idiot for it, but I do think the Jets are going to be pretty damn good as well. So that's I just think they're going to be really good. That defense is so good. They just need competent play.
Yeah.
Just need
kind of like
competent
Nebraska,
play.
Huh?
I mean, that defense wasn't amazing when they gave up like 40 points to the Michigan Wolverines, but I mean, whatever.
Oh man, well, when you turn it over 7 times, it's kind of hard to.
They just got manhandled by the Wolverines, bro.
I'm joking.
They got manhandled.
Okay, easy, partner, easy.
But
easy.
I
Bear.
Get what
you're trying to say. Bear, easy. Come, hang on there, boy.
You poked it, Caleb.
Easy.
You started
I
it.
did. Didn't mean to poke it that hard.
Likes to
I didn't mean to poke it that hard, Robert. I apologize.
That's what she said.
So now out to the AFC West. Jack, I apologize. I fully believe there were very darkly tinted orange-colored glasses when going through this, but we will explain and argue when it happens.
We can talk about it right now. Just drop the record. We can talk about it.
At the bottom of this division, we do have the Las Vegas Raiders sitting at 5-12. Next up from there, we have the Denver Broncos sitting at 8-9. Or no, I apologize. The Chargers at 7-10, and then the Broncos at 8-9. And
we're reaching for it.
Go figure.
For it.
Hold on. Let's finish it up, and then we'll talk about it.
Top of the division, we have the Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs finished this year at 13-4 and win this division. They find themselves competing for one of the top spots in the AFC, depending on what the Jets are doing, if they are 15-2 or not, and obviously putting themselves back in position to win another Super Bowl and three-peat. So, I think, me personally, and I've said this with Pinky, and he does not agree with me, and I can be swayed a little bit more towards his side than the other side, but I still do believe, as far as overall rosters are concerned, the Broncos are closer to the likes of the Patriots and the Giants at 0-16 than they are the likes of a Tampa Bay or a Minnesota Vikings at 8-9. The Raiders being at the bottom at 5-12 I have actually already said I think they could be sneaky better than a lot of people think. I think they do have a lot of weapons. We've talked about it, how their top end talent is far superior to whatever the Broncos have as top end talent. So, Jack, as a Broncos fan, just letting you know, there are those who believe that this is maybe not necessarily should be reversed, but a lot more equal or even than it is. Now, the Raiders are still going to struggle. Their defense overall is not great. I think they do struggle to repeat for a whole season what they were doing for that period of time under Pierce as a whole sample size. The offense does have some question marks, specifically at quarterback. Gardner Minshew is good, but he's not great.
Running back?
We're not quite sure the running back. The offensive line still has some things that they need to prove. I think I'm hating. Hold up a second here.
I'm hating, Jack. I'm hating.
I'm actually trying to argue for the Raiders a little bit.
Caleb has said multiple times he's excited about the Raiders. I just don't think Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell move the needle.
He's going to do this every time, isn't he, Robert? I did not say I'm excited about the Raiders. He's going to do this every time.
You did say that.
No, we were talking. You asked us for offenses we could be excited for to see next season.
And he was excited about the Raiders.
And so I said I'm excited about the potential of the Raiders offense. I'm not excited for the Raiders. Like, those are two very different ideas. Robert, am I wrong here?
No, I will give him that. We'll have to double check the record, but if he was specifically talking about the offense, I'll give him that. He
was excited about the offense, but that's still excited about the Raiders offense.
No.
Pinky's really bubbling that out every time that I feel like his arm bubble grew bigger each time he said that.
It kept getting, like, man, are we multiplying here?
Look, Jack, I think honestly the offensive line could be solid. I think the way you help that is if you run a lot of 2 tight end sets with Mayer and Bowers. I think between Jacoby Myers and Devontae Adams, you have some weapons on the outside. You can run McConkey.
Not McConkey. He's on the Chargers.
I mean, not McConkey. McConkey. Why am I drawing a blank? Anyways, you can run the other guy in the slot. I like what they added on the defensive side, but we'll see what happens. Why, Jack, buddy, like, what do you think their record's going to be, Jack? Because I'm actually saying it's going to be better than the one I just read off for the group as a podcast.
This was the three.
So if we're making a bet, Jack, you would have to make it against what I believe their record's going to be.
Let's be honest,
as the podcast as a whole.
And Jack, as a Raiders fan, do you really want to win more than 5 games and have to still have Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell as your quarterback moving forward?
No. You should be at 3.
Like, again, if you guys are better than Broncos, who gives a fuck? We both missed the playoffs. Like, that's not gonna. Neither one of us are making the playoffs based on these records we've projected.
Oh, no way. Would
you rather get in the draft and get a quarterback, or keep being halfway decent and not being able to get a quarterback? Like, which one do you want to go with? Because Aiden O'Connell or Gardner Minshew are not taking you to the promised land. Could they surprise and make a wild card? Sure, I'd go with that. If Antonio Pierce turns out to be a good head coach with Max Crosby on defense and Christian Wilkins, who I love Max Crosby, and I hate that I love Max Crosby. He's the dude. I love his tattoos. I love his work ethic. I love everything he does. He hates the Broncos.
I have said he's arguably the best defensive player in the league.
Absolutely. We will give the Raiders some credit. Do you really want them to be that good so that you keep being bad? Because unless you get a quarterback, you're never going to be what you want to be. And that's a fact. And that, for Broncos fans, same thing. I'm hoping. I'm on the Bo train. I've got some hope. I'm hoping Bo turns out. But if Bo doesn't, like, I still want to suck enough at one point to draft a quarterback again, to get back in there. If you continually be mediocre, you never get to the top where you can draft a quarterback. Unless you get lucky and draft Lamar at 32. Or, rare cases. Raiders don't lose on purpose, but they fucking should.
Stop, Pinky. Hang on. Just easy. Jack, give us what you think the Raiders' record will be. What is your honest evaluation of what their record will be?
Nobody said they're not better than Denver, Jack. Like,
well, I mean, we did with a 5-12 and an 8
with the record, yeah. But I also think they'll trade Devontae by midseason because he's going to be pissed off at how bad Gardner and Aiden O'Connell are.
Pinky takes more liberties with his schedule predictions than he does his fantasy predictions. I'll just throw that out there.
I will say I don't have Devontae Adams in any of my leagues, specifically because he's got Gardner and Aiden O'Connell throwing to him.
So, that's a little bold, Jack. It's a little bold. 8-9, 10-7.
I don't know where the 8's coming from, but again,
I can see a 7-10, and I've talked about that, but there's a lot of factors that depend on them getting up to that. Again, the overall talent on the team is not at a great level. And I've said the same about the Broncos. I just talked about how they're closer to the Giants and the Patriots, in my opinion, than they are, your Tampa Bay Buccaneers or your LA Rams at that 8-9 level. So to see them getting to that,
and I think the Broncos got 8-9 last season, and I think they'll get better quarterback play this year. So
it's possible, and this is why it's so much fun to do this, because it creates a lot of conversation and back and forth.
We get to revisit this week to week here in just
a
couple weeks.
As a true Raiders fan that you are, Jack, because you absolutely are, and you've been there a long time. Do you really want to be good? Would you rather suck for that season and draft a good what we would say would be a good quarterback, Carson Beck, Shedeur Sanders? I mean, what do you want to bet?
Jack, it'd have to be Pinky or Robert. It's not going to be me because that's not how I felt. So I can't take that bet for you.
Caleb's got the Broncos at like 5-12. So I think they'll at least win 6 to 8 games. That's where I'm at with the Broncos.
I saw them in the 5 to 6 range, and I saw the Raiders in the 6 to 7 range.
Which is splitting hairs when you really get down to it. Who do we have in the playoffs of the AFC?
I'm just saying, I can't take that bet because I don't necessarily see it one way or the other. You know what I mean?
It's splitting hairs at this point, but what do you have for the AFC playoff teams? Who's that? Who's in the playoffs?
Obviously, 15-2 gets that 1 seed with the Jets. Okay, that stands out there. Then you've got the 13-4 teams with Baltimore, Buffalo, and Cincinnati, and KC. So that's 4 13-4 teams. And then you pull in, where are they? I apologize. The 2 10-7 teams with Cleveland and Miami.
Okay. I know how we picked Cleveland, but I feel like I'm on the fence with Cleveland. I don't know if they'd quite be there, but they'd be the team I possibly kick out. But yeah, I like that. Jack.
Oh, I'm sorry. Houston is also at 10-7.
Okay.
So there's 3 teams vying for those last 2 spots.
Okay. Jack, there's a couple things here.
Oh, no, wait. Houston's automatically in.
Because they won the AFC South.
Yeah, so it's just 1 spot with Cleveland and who did I say it was? I apologize, I'm drawing a blank.
Miami.
Cleveland and Miami for the 7th spot. At 10-7, one of them gets the 7th spot.
Yeah. Look, Jack, trading up doesn't work very often for a quarterback. It does work occasionally, like Josh Allen, like Patrick Mahomes. But other than that, it hasn't worked very often of trading up for a quarterback. Also, you have to have a team that has that first pick, second pick, third pick that doesn't need a quarterback. Which in our scenario, The Panthers technically don't need a quarterback, but maybe they do. The Patriots don't need a quarterback because they have Drake May, and the Giants absolutely do need a quarterback. So again, you have to come into a situation where if you don't have that 1, 2, 3 pick, that you have the draft ammunition to get up there with that team who also doesn't need a quarterback. You could make the case that the Panthers are still bad enough, they might still want to draft a quarterback if they like Carson Beck or Shedeur Sanders. Giants will absolutely draft a quarterback. They wanted to trade up and draft one this year. And then you've got the Patriots who have Drake May. They're not going to take a quarterback. That would be the only team I think would trade out of number 1 for that. But you got to be close enough to 1 to make that trade. They're not getting out of the top 10. So unless you suck and be in the top 10, you're not going to get there. So again, it comes back to everybody says trade up, trade up. There's not that many teams that want to trade down that far if you are a decent team. The Chiefs got lucky. They traded from like 25 or 24 down to 10 because Buffalo was dumb. And they basically traded down to 25, got a first-round pick for the next year, and they gave up Mahomes. That doesn't happen very often. The next year, they traded up with a first-round pick and got Josh Allen, right? It kind of worked out. But at the end of the day,
when you don't have to trade up into the top 4 to 5, it actually has a fairly okay percentages working out. But the problem is one of the top dudes falling outside of the 4 to 5 is kind of rare when it comes to who that guy ends up coming. Because you're not going to take Brady at 15, right? Like he was in the 6th round because nobody thought he was going to be good. You know, so those things they become a giant roll of the dice at that point.
Purdy is Mr. Irrelevant, right?
Yeah.
Like that, those are rare, very
Russell
rare.
Wilson went in the 3rd. And worked out really well for Seattle for those years.
Drew Brees in the 2nd.
So you don't know. If you're not in the top 4 or 5, then the trade up, I've seen actually some articles. I've read a lot of stuff about it. Statistically, it can work out well. But you have to count on a quarterback-heavy draft where a lot of guys are there and somebody's able to fall down, and that doesn't happen very often. Aaron Rodgers falling to the Vikings at 20, I think it was.
No, he fell to 24.
Okay, 24. Like, those things don't usually happen.
And again,
So,
it was
luck
Alex
plays a
Smith
big
at
part in
1.
this.
It was Alex Smith at 1, Aaron Rodgers at 24. So there wasn't another
Right.
quarterback in between there.
And there was a huge debate between who was going to go 1. And San Francisco ended up going with Alex Smith. So it was kind of a Peyton Manning, Ryan Leaf situation that year. A lot of people on both sides of that fence. Just, what did you like? And that's what San Francisco took. And unfortunately, it didn't work out well for San Francisco. It worked out well for Green Bay. You see what happens. I've always, and Pinky and I talked about this a lot. We don't necessarily see eye to eye on this, but it's one thing that Pinky doesn't hate of all my takes. He just doesn't agree with is the whole kind of tear it down and rebuild and go again after you won championship.
Caleb, who do the Raiders win? Where are their wins that we predicted?
Why are we spending so much time on this one?
We got some engagement from Jack.
Okay.
Jack's on there listening.
All right. Hang on. I gotta pull it back up here. Hang on.
He's asking the question, like,
they beat Carolina, they beat Pittsburgh, they beat Denver at home, they beat New Orleans, and they beat the Chargers at home.
Where are the other wins?
You want to give them Jacksonville at home there? There's another one, Jack. That's 6.
I mean, that's a coin
Tampa
toss.
Bay, maybe Tampa Bay.
Jack, you're not going to win every game against the Broncos for the rest of time. It's not going to happen. And again, a lot of that 8-0 was based on Josh Jacobs, and he ain't there no more. I'm sorry, my guy. Josh Jacobs hated the Broncos. That dude went for 152 touches almost every game. He ain't there no more. So, again, times are changing.
Look, law of averages does – the beauty of the NFL, Jack, is they've set – the shield has set it up so that those law of averages eventually even themselves back out. So yeah, you're 8-0 over the last 4 years. Okay,
and the Chiefs, the Chiefs were 15-0 against the Broncos.
The more likely,
guess what happened? They lost.
Easy, Pinky, stop. Just stop. Jack, the more likely thing that happens when you have two not good teams playing each other is that they split the games they play when they play each other more than once. So a lot of these situations when we're looking at schedule, when two not great teams play each other, the more likely thing that's going to happen is the teams split those games 1-1. The same can be said when you're talking about two really good teams playing each other more than once. The more likely outcome is that they usually split those games. The NFL does not like one team to have a dominant record against another. That's why you completely go from the cellar to the ceiling and out in a 3-year, maybe even 2-year period if your front office and your draft and everything is done correctly. So,
or the Texans, who went from the bottom to the top in 1 year.
The Shield has set it up specifically for these scenarios. So while there are anomalies, while there are numbers where you're 8-0, the Chiefs are whatever they were until that win last year. So the Chiefs were 13 or 14-0 against the Broncos there for a while.
15 or 15-0, I think.
So and then the Broncos ended up beating them. So at some point, it changes. And you want to say that they beat the Broncos both times next year and they have 6 and the Broncos have 7? Oh, okay.
Sure.
Like, if that's really the semantics you want to argue, Jack, like, you're not going to find us, like, arguing against that. Like, we don't necessarily disagree with that.
Is that possible? Sure. I'm not a big Raider hater, Jack. So, like, if the Raiders beat the Broncos twice, it happened. Like, it is what it is. But in the last multiple games that this has happened, it's been a lot on Josh Jacobs, and he ain't there no more. So,
Jack, if you listen to us at all, don't worry about the salary cap. That's a made-up imaginary number, just like dragons and unicorns. So that doesn't really matter a whole lot, to be honest.
Yeah, and we're taking $53 million this year and $32 million next year, and next year we have over $80 million in cap space because we don't have a lot of guys that have a big contract. So.
They also had all their draft picks this year, so that was no longer
except for their second rounder.
Well, except for the second, but again,
we still had 7 draft picks. So
those things aren't necessarily issues. Now, what are issues is the way it was managed before the Russell Wilson, up to the Russell Wilson that left the roster very thin. And then the Russell Wilson only magnified the issues that were actually already there. It didn't help them. It made them worse, unfortunately. So, look, Broncos aren't going to be good. The Broncos would be lucky to be anywhere close to 8-9, in my opinion. They did have a solid record last year, though, by some baffling account. So it's not like it would be unheard of for them to kind of repeat some of the same at the same time.
But again, 6, 7, 8 wins. We're still not making
3,
the playoffs.
baby. 3 was the magic number we threw out there before we even started. Deviation. Plus minus.
Raiders will be in the same scenario. If they make 8 wins and the Broncos are at 5 wins, neither one of us made the playoffs. Like, it's just not happening. It's just not happening. We're all in the same place. We're still sitting on our couch when it comes to January, which is okay. If we get a top 10 pick and we can draft a pass rusher or a wide receiver, I'm more than cool with that because we need both of those guys.
Jack, the problem is you're not going to have us say that because
I will. I'll come on. Like,
okay.
If you want me to come on, yeah. I'd love to come on the Wild West anytime. I appreciate the invite.
He doesn't just want you on. He wants you to come on and say the Broncos are better than the Raiders. That's what he wants you to do.
I think they have a better head coach, and I think they've got a better trajectory as it stands at this moment. Yes. I do think the Raiders have a more talented team when you talk about their superstars. Yes, that's a fact. I won't even argue that. Christian Wilkins, Max Crosby, Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, those guys are top guys that the Broncos don't have those guys. We've got talent in what we would call no-name talent in other places. I think the Raiders have a more talented team. I just don't think they have a good head coach right now. And maybe Antonio Pierce turns into a good coach. We don't know. we're actually paying Russ $52 million or $53 million this year to play for the Steelers. But, facts matter. Just saying. Facts matter. We'll pay him $35 next year to play somewhere else.
Or he'll be retired.
Somebody will give him another $1 million to play somewhere else.
I don't know.
It's fine. That's why he took $1 million this year, because he could. He's getting paid by us. He'll get paid by us next year too. That's fine. I appreciate that they ripped the Band-Aid off and got rid of it rather than sticking with it, like the Browns are currently doing with Deshaun Watson.
So many mistakes were made to get to that point.
There are a lot of mistakes that are made. And again, if you do not have a quarterback in this league, if the rest of your team, top to bottom, is not elite, you are not going to be good or compete to where it matters. If you make the playoffs, who gives a shit? You're not going anywhere.
Jack, are you mad you didn't get Penix?
Brock Bowers is a good consolation prize.
I want to know if you're mad you didn't get Penix.
I think we could all say, though, like the Falcons screwed themselves, because how good would Kirk Cousins be if he had Drake London, Kyle Pitts, and Rome Odunze that he was throwing to for the next 3 years that he's under contract with guaranteed money for, versus having Michael Penix sitting there? So
I still don't hate that pick for Atlanta.
I know you don't, and I understand the philosophy.
I think, Darnell Mooney down there is no slouch, and you'll see him kind of come back up a little bit. I think no matter what Atlanta did right there with what was on the board, it was a luxury pick. And I do believe that. And it's crazy to say that about Atlanta, but I think it was a bit of a luxury pick for them, just based on what they already had and where they were and what they could use.
But I really think Rome Odunze would have really helped that offense right now be over the top. I know Mooney's no slouch, but Odunze is I think Odunze will be better than Drake London.
See, I think another offensive lineman would have been better for them for the right now as far as competing than Rome Odunze would have been. If you're talking about what's going to put them towards more in that upper echelon of positioning for the championship. So I wouldn't have even gone Rome Odunze. But I think Penix, one, if Cousins isn't able to play the full season or gets hurt again or something, I think Penix showed very, very quickly in preseason that he's ready to roll. Now, he's a rookie. He'll still have some issues and some growing pains and things of that nature. But, God, I love watching that dude throw the ball. And he looked
he only played game one.
Huh?
He only played game one. They put him on the bench for after that.
And they literally came out and said, we've seen enough from him that we don't need to evaluate him this preseason anymore. That's exactly what Atlanta said. So, and I wouldn't disagree based on what I saw him throw. He looked like a seasoned pro throwing the ball out there on the field. And that's what people talked about was his arm talent. They were a little worried about injuries and his age and that sort of thing. His arm talent was never a question. And he very quickly demonstrated that. So, if Cousins does go down, is he able to keep them in the hunt still with all the talent that they do have that we expect them to actually take advantage of this season? Quite possibly. So it may not be as bad a move. But, again, I think it's luxury. I think it's a luxury pick.
And Jack, we love Bowers. I was at the draft in the crowd, standing next to a Raiders fan. And even him at that moment, when they drafted Bowers, was like, what are we doing? And I was just like, no, hold on. Bowers is awesome, man. You should be excited about that. Bowers can be that next great tight end.
Anytime, Jack. Anytime. And yeah, Jack, again, if you have anybody within that organization that listens to you as a fan insider, let them know that there's somebody from an outside perspective, not a fan of the team, that thinks if they run a little too tight end with Mayer and Bowers, Adams and Jacoby Myers, they could have something really dangerous and scary on their hands in many different situations. With
better quarterbacks than Gardner and Aiden O'Connell.
It would make their quarterbacks better. I'm not saying that they would be great, but it would just help everybody.
I do not. I like Gardner. I do like Gardner, but I just don't think he's going to be able to take you to that level that you need to be at. He's okay. So
he's a more entertaining Baker Mayfield.
And Baker's been to the playoffs twice and won 2 playoff games. So,
well, he's played on better teams than Gardner Minshew has,
and that's still the fact this year.
Yeah, I'm just saying. I think they're basically the exact same quarterback.
I think Baker's a little bit better, in my opinion. But Gardner's got swagger. His teammates like him. He's a leader. I think he's good enough. He just, unfortunately, I do think he's very limited when it comes to his arm strength and what he can do. So, Minshew was very close to getting the Colts to the playoffs. He played really well last year. And I think that's probably his ceiling, though. I just don't think he's got a lot more to, like, he's not going to get any better than what he was. So, all right, we got to wrap this up. It's a pretty good one. Thank you to everybody in the chat. We love you guys. We love talking ball. We don't mind if you debate us, argue us. Jack, I will take you up on that if you want to send me an invite to the show. I mean, I've got the login credentials. You don't even have to send me the invite. I can just get into the show. I can get into your studio and get in the show anytime. If you want me to come on the Wild West, I'm cool with that. I will say the Broncos will be better than the Raiders this season because I do think they will be better than the Raiders this season.
Okay. Robert, final thought.
Dude, 2 more weeks. It's going to be exciting. Been getting to know
Man,
a little bit more.
Hold on. A week from Thursday.
A week from
Not
Thursday.
2 weeks. We got a week from Thursday.
Thursday, you're right.
A week from Thursday because we got KC and Baltimore.
It's been awesome getting to build some more knowledge and everything with you all. Caleb, I'll just have to say, Last Command, Dark Jedi, Balin Skull, do your research. Come back to me when you're ready. All I gotta say.
You changed what you said, so
I did not change anything.
Get what you're talking about straight first, and then we can have the conversation.
Hey, let's argue this offline. We'll argue this offline.
I'm going to bed after this.
Just say there's a difference between the dark side and the Sith. That's all. I'm just saying there's a difference between the two things.
I said Dark Jedi, not Dark Side. Big difference. Big difference.
College football started. NFL roughly week and a half. Go Big Red Saturday. It starts. Please.
Oh. Wait, go ahead. Go Big Red.
Oh, no, I was going to finish off. So whatever you got to say it.
I was going to say, next Tuesday, we should have a guest on, a friend of Robert and I's, Ron Young. Going to try to get him on the pod. We're going to talk some wrestling if you're WWE fans. Robert and I are going to WWE Raw on Monday, Labor Day. And Ron is going with us, and he's been to 10 WrestleManias. He's a wealth of knowledge. He's a really big wrestling fan, big Broncos fan as well. So we're going to try to have him on the show to chop it up a little bit and have a good time.
Caleb,
that is not happening next week.
Next Tuesday?
Yeah, because I just wanted to double check and make sure I wasn't thinking of something else. But as Robert and I were talking about when you were blacked out at the very beginning, we have a fantasy draft to do and a heavy fantasy conversation leading into the NFL start of the season on Thursday. So as much as I want to hear about Raw, that's going to have to wait until the following Tuesday so that we can talk about opening weekend and then recap your Raw. Bring him on if you'd like as a guest to discuss it and stuff. But just time-wise, that's what we're going to have to do, my guy.
I don't like saying you're right very often, Caleb,
know,
but in this instance, you may be right. All right.
That being
said, us home.
Do not hesitate to spend that time with your loved ones, family, friends, whoever you consider your inner circle. Do not take those moments for granted. Cherish them. Always take advantage of them. We appreciate everybody who follows, likes, shares, comments, discusses, agrees or disagrees. We appreciate it all more than we could ever express to you guys. Till next Tuesday. Good being back, baby. We're out. Peace.
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Simcoe's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east.